From Topps comes the all-new digital card collecting app, free to download from iTunes or Google Play. Star Wars Card Trader.
For the first time ever, collect and trade everything from legendary 1977 Star Wars cards to new cards featuring exclusive content from Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
All from the comfort of your mobile devices. Star Wars Card Trader.
These are the cards you're looking for.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z and Corey Clubb, the podcast you're looking for. This is. Yes.
For an entire generation, people have experienced Star Wars the only way it's been possible, on the TV screen. But if you've only seen it this way, you haven't seen it at all.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
We've been waiting for you.
The Force is strong here, even stronger than the coffee.
At last! Where have you been?
Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi. Here are your hosts, Dan Z and Corey Clubb.
Hello, this is Dan Z, and welcome to show number 42 of Coffee with Kenobi, a Star Wars podcast that analyzes our favorite saga in a whole new way. Filling in for Corey Clubb is our good friend and co-host, Jeff McGee.
Hello, everybody. Be sure to check out our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com, for the latest press releases from Lucasfilm, Disney, and much more. A very special thank you to our media specialist, Lisa Dullard, for always being on top of things and for bringing you spoiler-free news from the world of Star Wars. And as always, I'd also like to invite you to head over to marvindogmedia.com to check out some of the podcast offerings we have there, from Bantha Banter, a Star Wars chat show, through Talking Toys with Taylor and Jeff, and the pilot episode with my buddy Corey, where we discuss the first episode of a different TV series every time.
In today's show, Cole Horton joins us as we discuss our topic for show number 42, Star Wars and History. Cole's writing on StarWars.com is a must-read for fans as he dissects and analyzes the parallels between the two. He will also share with us news on his new book, Star Wars, Absolutely Everything You Need to Know, as well as the other things that he is working on.
We will also talk with Disney aficionado Jim Hill as he discusses the latest news on the Star Wars presence in the Disney theme parks, and Mark Van Ohlen joins us to discuss the latest from Topps. And our special correspondent Ted shares his experiences at the D23 Expo. A huge thank you to Mediocre Jedi, Mike Audette, Neil Lowry, Dennis Keithley, Matt Moore, Lillian Torres, Richard Rutledge Jr., Angela Souse, Chris Perillo, Graham Densham, and Jesse for their contributions to our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon page. We are overcome by your generosity and kindness, and we truly do appreciate it.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Oh, wait. This is interesting.
You found something.
I'm about to let everyone in on the secret.
The D23 Expo featured some of the most stunning Star Wars news since Disney announced the purchase of Lucasfilm. And Disney expert and theme park aficionado Jim Hill is here to tell us all about it. Welcome back, Jim.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Jeff. How are you guys tonight?
Doing great. It's a joy. I do also want to publicly thank you for coming to our podcast stage at Celebration Anaheim.
No, that's, you guys put on a nice show. And that was back during the Star Wars weekend, though, wasn't it?
That was in April.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Celebration Anaheim. Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. Pretty fantastic experience. So can you give us kind of an overview of what went into the planning of Star Wars Land, and what do we know so far?
Well, to be honest, it all sort of kind of ties back to the deal. I mean, everybody at this point knows the story of what happened when they were opening Star Tours, The Adventures Continue in Orlando. George Lucas and Bob Iger had breakfast that morning in the Brown Derby, and this was before they went on stage. And I don't know if you've seen the video of the elaborate film sequence of the two of them supposedly as Jedi Knights battling their way from Star Tours to the stage in the middle of the park, but this was before that, and they were just sitting down for breakfast. And face it, Iger is kind of the deal of or the king of acquisitions, and having brought Pixar into the fold in 2006, and then in 2009 cutting the deal for Marvel. So here he was sitting with George, and it's the work had gone well on Star Tours, The Adventures Continue, and again, let's remember that George actually said no to Disney updating, Star Tours during the Eisner years. He was kind of upset with the upkeep on Indiana Jones and that sort of thing. So there was actually a pod race version of the ride that was supposed to go in pretty much around 99, 2000, just as that one went out into theaters. But Lucas was ticked off at Eisner for, just not keeping the stuff that was there bright and shining up to the Disney standard. So, even though the Imagineers had done all the work, he said no. And so now jump ahead, a decade. And, not only had Lucas come on board or, said yes to, to Bob Iger and the Imagineers, they'd done this elaborate branching version of Star Tours. So it had been a nice collaborative moment at that point. And so over, the two of them are kind of health nuts. Over a relatively healthy breakfast at the Brown Derby, Iger just sort of floated, have you ever thought about, selling Lucasfilm? And, George sort of flat out said, well, no, not really. But if I were, I'd sell it to you guys because Disney has a gift for keeping properties evergreen. And, so that sort of opened the door. And 8 months later, Lucas gives Iger a call and said, that conversation we had? And it's like, yep, let's go forward with this. And so now, so jump ahead, and this is, look at where we are now. I mean, we've got The Force Awakens has wrapped, and, we're shooting Rogue One now. We're hearing about directors being selected for, Star Wars, 8 and 9, and, and so this is the Disney company really getting serious about, making the most of this particular property, the Star Wars property. And so the Imagineers have been at work solidly on this idea for the past 2 years. And it's mutated numerous times. In fact, what's kind of interesting about what they finally arrived at, and again, we're going to see versions of this land. They're not going to exactly be mirrors. A lot of that have to do with the footprint of the places they're going to be dropped in the individual parks. But they're both going to be approximately 14 acres of attractions and, elaborate and immersive environments for us to explore. But it was kind of interesting earlier this year. The word had come down that the board had, in essence, pushed back against Imagineers, the Imagineers' first take on this, because they felt it was just more of the same. It was kind of the Tatooine Traders type building, and it was, it was, very heavily leaning on Mos Eisley. And what's kind of interesting about what Disney's decided to do here is what they eventually came down to do is that this is a relatively loose configuration of the Star Wars universe, with the idea being that if you're a fan of the original trilogies, those elements are there. I mean, for example, there's going to be an attraction where you can, you get to pilot the Millennium Falcon. Likewise, there's going to be a cantina experience, not the Mos Eisley cantina, mind you, but in fact, in a fun little way to tie it directly back to the Mos Eisley cantina, this restaurant, which what I was told this weekend, they haven't decided yet if it's going to seat 300 people or 500 people. But it's going to be the approximate size of Be Our Guest at Walt Disney World.
That's a good size restaurant.
Well, they honestly believe that that many people will want to get into the cantina, to eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever. And what's kind of fun about it is the current plan is that on stage, there'll be a little revolving stage. Well, not little, because it has to hold a large number of animatronic figures. But, there'll be about a 15 to 20 minute long show featuring the musicians from the cantina. And the gimmick will be that, straight from their 19-week engagement at the Mos Eisley Cantina on Tatooine. Here's the band, and then the other. What is it? We had this conversation the last time we recorded. The band from Jabba's Palace.
Size Noodles.
There we go. So it will revolve, and Cy Snoodles will be on stage, and there'll be, as I understand it, there'll be a third stage with a human performer just to throw off the audience. But this will be center of the cantina, and everyone will be able to see these pieces of entertainment. Going to do the configuration, but they decided that they really couldn't do the Mos Eisley Cantina, largely because it capacity issues.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't going to be the number of people who were going to want to get into it each day. They needed a large facility. They needed something Beauty and the Beast size. So this is what's going down. But again, getting back to the point of if you like the prequels, if you'll notice if you've looked at the concept art, a lot of the rounded buildings and the stylization suggest a Naboo from Phantom Menace, and then to further roll the dice, in fact, this is what's kind of interesting. I chatting this past weekend with a number of people from the studio. As excited as they are about The Force Awakens, they feel that they're extremely confident that they're delivering the film that everybody wants, that does the great job of balancing elements from the original trilogy and bringing in these new characters and, setting up a grand story that will play out over the next two installments. The movie that people are really excited about is Rogue One, because they believe that telling the story of the heist to get the Death Star plans is really, it's going to be a moment that everyone's always heard about but never seen. And, just it's one of these things where it's like, it's such a good script. Everyone's so excited about it that the Imagineers actually have used this as the basis for the you may have seen the concept art for the scene where people are being pursued by this large contingent of stormtroopers.
Yes.
You're reliving you're suddenly the folks with the plans for the Death Star.
Wow.
So this is that's built. I mean, if you can believe it, this is an attraction that's going to be based on a movie that none of us have seen yet. But but again, the Imagineers have had access to all of the material, and that's what this land is really all about. It has to fit every piece of Star Wars, including Star Wars Rebels.
So I thought it was connected more to Episode 7, but it sounds like Rogue One has really made an impact on them.
Now, they really, really believe that this, in a lot of ways, these legacy films that Kathleen Kennedy has decided to do between the various different chapters are going to be game changers, that they're going to allow them to bump out the galaxy in a different way. More to the point, much like the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's a possibility of creating stories that allow, that allow to move in interesting direction to bring in different characters. But of course, the downside is this 14-acre land. Again, remember, we're making two of them. We're building, one in Anaheim and one in Orlando. The theme park that's now known as Disney Hollywood Studios, but will be changing its name, sometime in the next 5 years. And again, in fact, that's the downside, guys. We are talking 3 to 5 years, and I would bet we're closer to 5.
Yeah, Disney is never really in a hurry, but certainly when you compare them to Universal, as you and I and Lennon talked about, quite different. But the quality will be there, and it gives everybody plenty of time to buy a lot of Star Wars souvenirs.
Well, and speaking of which, that Disney intends to give you the opportunity to buy those souvenirs as soon as possible. They have, take for example, at Disney's Hollywood Studios. They just shut down their Magic of Disney Animation exhibit because that is in the process of being gutted.
Seasons of the Force, right?
Well, actually, that's going to be the location of the Star Wars launch bay. This is where they're going to build an attraction that will feature props from The Force Awakens. You'll have an opportunity to get your photo taken with Chewbacca, and totally coincidentally, the launch bay will be talking about the planet that you'll soon be able to travel to. This port city, which features this port city that's right at the edge of the galaxy that, lots of different species come into. So you'll get a lot of concept art, you'll have models, that sort of thing. And in fact, not a mirror version, because again, it's in a different shaped building. They're actually putting Disneyland's Star Wars launch bay into the base of the old Carousel of Progress building, where Interventions has been housed for 10 to 15 years at this point.
That makes sense.
And then the interesting thing, though, is that you're going to have two Disney franchises right on top of one another, because the upper floor will remain sort of a superhero hall of fame for the Marvel franchise. So, in theory, in one building, you can go from, what's now Disney's big live action franchise to the one that Disney hopes will be its next big live action franchise.
Right. So it's basically heaven for all of us, is what you're saying.
Right.
Well, yeah. And again, though, it's just what's kind of interesting is that one of the buttons they've been hitting very, very hard is that this facility will give folks lots of opportunities to interact with the Star Wars Rebels characters. Disney's been very, very pleased with the way that's been received. In fact,
It's a wonderful show.
It is. And the interesting thing is that I was talking with Dave Filoni about it at the Star Wars weekends. And it's an interesting conceit, and especially now that Rogue One is in the works. Because you gotta, face it, Star Wars Rebels is going full speed at a brick wall. I mean, we all know there's a way this story ends. And face it, as we watch as we watch New Hope, none of the characters we've been introduced to, the main characters of Star Wars Rebels pop up in that film. So, it's hard to think that things end well for them. Mind you, we've seen Darth Vader, we've seen Lando, we've seen, in fact, what's kind of interesting is to bring an Ahsoka in from Clone Wars. But it's just, it's wondering as we zoom up on Rogue One, how these pieces of the puzzle are going to connect together, and more to the point, how is Rogue One going to click into place with New Hope? Because face it, that when that film picks up, Leia has the Death Star plans, and she's trying to pass them off to R2-D2 and get him safely away. So but again, that's I think what's kind of interesting about what's going on in Star Wars or the Lucasfilm right now is there really is this sort of attempt to ape what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing, just creating this large canvas that and the notion that there can be fluidity between the two, the properties. I mean, much the same way that you'll see on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., events that actually happen in the films, whether it's, Age of Ultron, and, where that helicopter carrier came from. The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. actually explained that, Agent Coulson had been, siphoning money away to build that thing. So they're looking actually to do kind of the same thing with the Star Wars universe. That Star Wars Rebels and Rogue One and New Hope will all be one continuous piece of narrative at some point.
Which is just staggering. It's the kind of things we've been thinking about for a long time.
Well, they're starting to run it the way the Marvel Studios are doing it. They're running it almost like one huge television series.
The template is
with
there.
showrunners and everything, and I think it's very exciting.
But at the same time, it did come at a cost. I mean, think about all of those books, that
the
we
Legends
read.
line, yeah,
and everything that just sort of like, when they hit the button and decided this is canon and that is not. There were a lot of people like, but
it became CANNON for some people instead of CANON because there was a lot of hurt feelings. But I think that's been pretty recovered. Are you hearing people upset about losing some of the things that have been lost, especially at Hollywood studios, to add this in? I can't fathom that there are, but you never know.
Well, actually the park I've been hearing the most concerned about isn't Disney Hollywood Studios, because let's face it, they haven't made movies or television there in years.
No.
So this would be a wonderful addition. There's actually been some interesting comments pop up online about how this could be a really bad thing for Disneyland, and it's an interesting argument. In fact, Rick West of Theme Park Adventure is the one who's really sort of thumping the tub for this. But what Rick is suggesting that, it wasn't a bad thing when Star Tours came in January of '87, or Indy came in what was that, 90, 91?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, 90. Because they were individual attractions that actually fit into the lands they were in. I mean, Star Tours was a wonderful fit for Tomorrowland, and Indiana Jones Adventure was a wonderful fit for Adventureland. But now we're talking about a land that is only one IP. I mean, and a giant land. This is 14 acres. And just the whole notion of, the argument Rick makes is that, and this is that Disney's doing this in direct response to Harry Potter. And in fact, it's hard for Disney to argue this point, given that they hired away from Universal Scott Trowbridge, this did you come join Imagineering. And Scott was a key member of the Universal creative team that decided what to do with Harry Potter, that decided to do this really immersive environment that that replicated the sets from the film, that the shops were filled with things that you'd seen from the movies and so on. So to bring him in to do this for Star Wars, it's hard to argue that no, we'd have done this anyway. It's like, well, you hired the guy who did Harry Potter, and the other thing that was really kind of fascinating about this D23 Expo was that both for Avatar and the Avatar, the World of Pandora that's going into, Pandora, the World of Avatar. Got it backwards there, guys. Sorry. But going into Animal Kingdom and Star Wars Land, in both cases, they emphasized the food. In fact, for example, they actually mentioned from the stage, it's like, hey, get ready for blue milk, cool. But at the same time for Avatar Land, they actually talked about, it was great to go there and eat the native food, and they showed like the equivalent of a berry-filled taco, and then it was like, or again, weirdly shaped potatoes and carrots and things like that people were happily munching away on. And, in both cases, the people stress, it tastes just like the food at home, so it's like, okay, so got that. But yeah, it's, face it, you don't do that, and look, Disney sort of tried to do the same thing with LeFou's Brew at Gaston's Tavern and at New Fantasyland, and I don't know if either of you have gotten there and had it.
I have.
And
it's not bad. It's not bad.
There you go. There's a ringing endorsement.
Well, it doesn't have the theme behind it. I mean, the Harry Potter. That was one of the most captivating things in those books, is it appealed to all the senses, and there's not really a story like that for Beauty and the Beast.
No, and in fact, the thing of LeFou's Brew was that, I mean, face it, when you go to Harry Potter Land, you go to the Wizarding World, or at least the first version, Hogsmeade. I mean, you come through the gate, And one of the first things you see is you come through the archway leading into the village is that giant red wagon with that huge barrel on the, the thing that says butterbeer. And, that coupled with the fact that J.K. Rowling wanted to be responsible. She's one of these people who's very into trying to do the right thing. And she had, as the park was being developed, or this land for the park, there had just begun to be stories about how bad corn syrup was for the human body. And that, so she kind of laid down the law. She said, look, if you look at the books, they never mention Pepsi. They never mention Coke. They never mention carbonated beverages. So those can't be in the Wizarding World. And Universal, to their credit, honored that. And it's like, okay, so we won't have those in there. And but it's the combination of the placement and the fact that you can't get soda in the land is one of the reasons that that this butterbeer became such a huge seller. That coupled with the fact that it was in the movies, in the books, and that sort of thing. But they also sort of they tweaked the formula, so you really had no choice. You came in, you saw the giant red thing, and it's like, oh, and look, it comes in a souvenir mug. Okay, I got to have that.
And it actually is delicious.
Well, yeah, it is, but at the same time, it's just sort of like it's hard to replicate that in a Star Wars sense. Because face it, as exciting as these films are, and we can all name characters right off the top of our heads and places they went to, but what they had for lunch, not so much.
When I was a kid, that was the one thing I always complained about to my mom. I was like, it never showed them sitting down to a meal. When did they have lunch? Of course, I was a fat kid, and that was part of the problem.
Well, in fact, Len makes the joke that he bets that in The Force Awakens, there are going to be no less than 5 scenes where they eat. And in fact, boy, this Bantha burger is really good. Don't you think so? It's just like, the lack of subtlety when it comes to food items may be astounding. But they need it. They need those things that, I think we talked about this the last show, that outside of the cantina, the only restaurant that I remember out of the entire film series is, that Dex's Diner.
That's right.
In
episode 2. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so.
And that was not a place I would want to eat in. So.
No.
Well, if you're trading information,
That's right. Very American Graffiti, that scene.
Yeah. Now, speaking of which, though, we need to talk retail here because I'm sure you heard the other conceit of this land, which is that each of the shops are going to be manned by, again, this is supposedly a point, this port city is going to be a place where all sorts of species have set up camp and set up shops and restaurants and that sort of thing. So the notion is each restaurant, each shop is going to be staffed by a different species.
Oh.
And so, this is, kind of an intriguing concept because it means that each individual cast member that works in this place, it's not a question of, like on Main Street where, the Main Street USA at the Magic Kingdom, where people who work at the Emporium wear, pretty much the same outfit as the people who work across candy counter across the way. So if you need extra people, you can pull people in, and it doesn't really matter. They're all dressed for the turn of the century. On the other hand, this notion that each single shop is a family that's supposedly manned by a family that lives upstairs over their shop, different makeup jobs, different costumes. This is kind of going to be an operational challenge.
Yeah, the manpower, the cast members will be tricky.
And that coupled with the fact that everybody is going to have to, and in much the same way as Harry Potter. Everyone who worked at, originally the opening crew at Harry Potter, they actually had to take quizzes before, as part of the hiring process. And then those that knew enough going in were then given additional material that they had to study so that if they were quizzed by, people coming into the park, that they would, they'd be able to, well, that's Professor Quirrell. In fact, what's kind of interesting about Hogsmeade is it's actually set in a really precise time. It's actually set in the middle of the Triwizard Tournament in what is
Fourth
it? Harry
book,
Potter,
Goblet of Fire.
Yeah,
right.
Goblet of Fire. In fact, you can tell it's that because for example, as you're walking up the hill to go into the Dragon Challenge, they have all of the posters up. The yay for Potter, that sort of thing. I mean, it's a very specific time. Diagon Alley's not, a much looser frame. They didn't lock themselves in the same way. So, and we can pretty much expect the same thing with the Star Wars land because, again, it's got to be flexible enough that characters from the original trilogy can be there, characters from the prequel, and characters from these not only this new trilogy that they're doing, but these legacy films. Rogue One, and if what we're hearing is true, the young Han Solo film.
Well, and they did confirm that. I want to ask you: was there much buzz about the fact that it went from anthology films to being called a Star Wars story?
Well, I mean, it just I think. Face it, that this is, the way Disney works is, they're a company that is in fact driven by story. And I think at one point, in fact, I remember Kathleen Kennedy standing on stage in April. Did you actually get to that pitch, the presentation for the,
for when they showed the new trailer?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Okay. But the trailer for Rogue One,
oh no, I didn't see that. I did not see that.
Okay, because I remember Kathleen Kennedy being on stage and talking with the gentleman who's directing, and I'm sorry, blanking his name, the director of Godzilla.
Oh, it's
Colin Trevorrow.
No,
that's episode 9.
Sorry,
Gareth Edwards.
Gareth Edwards.
Yeah. Yes.
Gareth Edwards. Because he's a. I mean, you couldn't ask for a more Star Wars, person in your life. I mean, for example, he on his own traveled to Tunisia, went to the locations where they shot, the Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's house, and actually brought milk and blue powder with him so he could drink blue milk in that building. And that was one of the pictures they showed in the presentation. So. Trust me, folks. The right guy's making the first trilogy.
That's wonderful.
But anyway, but before we step away from Star Wars land here again, so remember that 3 to 5 years, but next year we're going to kick open the doors for the Star Wars launch bay at both Disneyland and Disney's Hollywood Studios.
And that's not the end of this year? I thought it was. They had said on Stars.com they said the end of this year.
No, it's going to be next year because remember, that's. You're going to see the new film elements folded in addition to the season of the Force event.
Okay. Will that replace Star Wars Weekends, by the way? Is that going to go away?
I think the word you're looking for is extending Star Wars Weekends.
Good. Good to hear.
In fact, you have to understand that all of the theme parks in Florida have looked at Epcot and just like, well, how can I get a flower and garden? How can I get a food and wine? And, Star Wars Weekends was close, but it was always 4 weekends, 5 weekends. I mean, I remember, I remember when it was only 2 or 3 weekends. I mean, they just kept bumping it out. So now, just the whole notion of, hey, how would you feel about 10 weeks, 11 weeks? This is going to be of size, and coupled with the fireworks show and the launch bay, getting people excited about the addition. But this will be the thing that sort of tides folks over till we actually get the thing up and running. And near as I can figure, they are going to try to get it all open at the same time
on both coasts.
Yeah, that just. In one big, sort of burst. Though, to be honest, Disneyland has the tougher row to hoe. In order for them to build this thing, they actually have to tear down a number of things from backstage at Disneyland. They're going to have to relocate the train route. They're going to have to take the pony farm that's back there where they keep all of the horses that pull the trolleys and move that off-site. There's some parade warehouses and that sort of thing. There's a lot of chess pieces that have to move around the board before they can get this thing open. So it's entirely possible that there may be some lag time in Anaheim. In fact, the other thing that and people are not going to want to hear this, but they're anticipating that just on the back of Star Wars Land, that they could see 10 to 20,000 additional people per day coming to Disneyland Park.
Wow.
And that means that they need another parking structure. In fact, that's most recently you may have heard that Disneyland purchased the Carousel Inn, which is across harbor. There's also 2 large buildings down toward I-5 that recently Disney bought. And what the plan is now is that those buildings come down and a new 7-story parking structure gets built there. And the Carousel Inn goes away to provide an area where they can put in the equivalent of a people mover tram thing that will allow people to be transported from this giant new parking structure to the over to the resort and into the parks. So, but you see, that's the thing, and you gotta build the parking structure before you build the land. And I guess that's the real irony, is that that, to face it, we all know how the Star Wars movie starts off a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And it's going to take a long, long time for all of these pieces to move around the board before we're going to get to go to Star Wars Land. Again, I would say realistically, we are probably talking 5 years at this point.
So you mentioned that Disneyland was going to have the harder time of the two getting it set up. Is the plan for them to be identical in Orlando and in Anaheim, or will each have their own unique contributions?
There may be individual stores that are, it's kind of interesting if you make the comparison with the, for example, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter that was built at Universal Studios Florida versus the Universal Studios Japan. They're basically the same thing, except, of course, that the Potter Land that was built in Japan, Osaka, has the Black Lake. In fact, there's this wonderful photo op as you walk up to the area, and you have this mirror image of the castle in this beautiful lake. They also have a shop that sells the dresses for the winter ball. In fact, they have Hermione's dress floating in the window there, and they even have a live owlry area that's really for real owls as opposed to little plastic ones that they have in Florida. So it'll be pretty much the same thing, Anaheim, Orlando, in that, you'll have the basic chunks, the big things will be the same, but there'll be individual tweaks, largely because of just the different areas that they'll be occupying. Just as of right now, Star Wars Land is still being built over toward Echo Lake and then sliding toward the back of the park that way. Eventually hooking up with Star Tours and Tatooine Traders, though.
Is Indy going to be safe?
Well, for a time, Indy was designated as where the speeder bike attraction was going. And what's kind of interesting is that in all of this talk, about the new land, there was absolutely no mention of the speeder bike attraction. So
I'm sort of relieved. They would be building an attraction based on something that came out in 1983.
Yeah, but on the other hand, those that rode the test version of it, even with its rough animation, said it was really, really cool. It was, but the interesting thing is that much of the same technology, that you're on a riding vehicle with a screen that goes, sort of wraps around you, is now going to be used for Flight of Passage, the Avatar attraction, where you basically climb the cliffs of a floating mountain and then fling yourself off.
Sounds like Soarin' in a way.
It is. It's only soaring. Sort of married to, a ride vehicle that you're straddling. In fact, a friend who's done the tests on this said, what's really bizarre about getting on the back of the faux Banshee is that the way the seat is configured, you can actually feel the creature breathe. The ribs expand.
Wow.
So it's one of those things. Really helps sell the notion that you're about to do something very dangerous on the top, on the back of this giant creature. So, and at the same time, there's some talk of, that Star Wars Land will have very similar things. That there's, in fact, one of the quick pieces of art they showed as part of the presentation and the Star Wars portion of the Disney Parks and Resort presentation was guests on the back of a Bantha, transport system that was taking people through the streets. And people forget that back when Disney first did its living character initiative thing, that's where Lucky the dinosaur and the Wally that used to roll through the parks started. But the first thing they did, the autonomous walking platform, was originally supposed to be kind of a triceratops, and they showed sort of this four-legged creature that was sort of chugging along. And the belief is that Disney's going to have some Banthas walking through the streets, and maybe a dewback or two. So,
and who knows what episode 7 will bring in there on. Before we let you go, I know I'm sure it's getting a little warm.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, this Millennium Falcon, right? When I saw the concept art for that, and you hear a lot of people who are Star Wars fans talking about getting emotional about things, and I saw the trailer at Celebration. I've got to experience a lot of great things. I got to tour Lucasfilm this summer. I got to do a lot of great stuff. But seeing this art and knowing that Star Wars Land is coming and realizing I could be on the Millennium Falcon, I actually had tears in my eyes. And I'm not the kind of person who just does that kind of thing. So are they actually going to build a life-size Millennium Falcon?
Yep, they are. In fact, you will walk up the load ramp that we all saw in, that hangar bay at Mos Eisley. And then we'll, come around, walk through the corridor to where we think the piloting bay should be. And,
wow.
Let's just put it this way. Disney has a bit of misdirection that will help when it comes to capacity. That the queue for this one's going to be definitely interesting. There are going to be several different doors leading to several different hangars but we'll all think that we're getting our individual experience aboard the Millennium Falcon, not thinking that there's a bunch of Millennium Falcons.
Sort of like how they did Back to the Future in a way. I mean, obviously there's different.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's sort of kind of the way they do Meeting Mickey in California.
Okay.
When you go to Mickey's house and you go out back to his movie barn, what people don't realize is when you enter that space, there's, it looks like there's one door and a bunch of shelves filled with film cans and props and that sort of thing. And what people don't know is that as soon as you go through the door, the cast member who's in the room rolls the the bookshelf down the wall, and on either side there are two doors that that are hidden, depending on where you push the bookshelves to, can hide how you enter. So expect the Millennium Falcon to have experience to have much the same gimmick, that you'll enter it's sort of a neutral space in the queue, and there'll be one door, but you won't realize that thanks to propping or that sort of thing, there are actually multiple doors and multiple ways to multiple Millennium Falcons. But that doesn't matter. We're all going to get to pilot the Millennium Falcon. So
it's a dream come true. What can you say? And so there's just so much here, and we will certainly be following this with bated breath, and it's exciting. And Jim, a real pleasure to have you back on Coffee with Kenobi. We'll certainly keep our Millennium Falcon doorways open for you to come on anytime you want to share your insights and just talk about some Star Wars and Disney with us.
Well, it'll be, it'd be interesting to circle back in, 6 or 8 months' time to see how this season of the Force thing plays out.
Yeah.
I not to belabor the obvious, but when you look at the quality of Star Wars Rebels and the buzz, that's the way they've been rolling out Force Awakens, and the obvious care they're already taking with Rogue One and that sort of thing. And in fact, just knowing what a huge geek Alan Tudyk is, and having done Serenity and Firefly, I was just kind of thrilled for him that he got selected to be in Rogue One as well. So he's a really nice guy. I got to chat with him when he was doing King Candy for Wreck-It Ralph, and I'm happy to hear that he landed this gig as well. But yeah, I really think that this is all going to work out for Star Wars fans, and I know it's been tough. I know that again, the whole reboot of the canon and all that, but I think
worth the wait.
It's worth the wait, and I think it's in the right hands. Kathleen has a vision for what she wants to do with this whole franchise, and in fact, it says a lot about Disney and Kathleen. That, think about it, at the live action presentation, they knew they had a room full of Star Wars fans that were there to see the original cast, and were thrilled that Harrison, unlike what happened at Star Wars Week, and that Harrison actually made the appearance. But they knew they could not send these people out the door without giving them a taste of Star Wars land. And even though that later that same day they were going to reveal everything that was going into the parks, they still felt like while they had these people in the room who were excited about the films, they had to show them what they were doing in the parks.
Yeah, that was the highlight, I think, because it was something. I mean, heck, we remember D23 a couple years ago. We saw crates that said Orange Harvest, and there was absolutely nothing, and that was very frustrating. But I got to tell you, on Saturday when we found out all that information, it was very worth the wait. As is always having you back on Coffee with Kenobi. So where, Jim, can people find you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
Well, these days I am doing a lot of work with Len Testa. We are doing the Unofficial Guide Disney Dish podcast. You can go to iTunes and get that. We've also begun doing some stuff for Bandcamp, a lot of exclusive shows over there. In fact, starting in September, we're going from 2 shows a month. We've been doing a series called The Chronological Disneyland, where actually the next one we're going to do discusses the development and construction of Space Mountain. And another thing, just the Disney Dish show, where oddly enough, we talk about things like this today. Perfect. But starting in September, we're actually doing bumping out to 4 weeks of content. We're going to do literally a show where people can send in questions, and we'll be answering them at the thing called Y4. And then it's actually the second series that we're starting that I'm most excited about. It's going to be called No Short Stories, and the gimmick is to do over 3 and 4 different nights or days a multi-part story. And the next one, the inaugural series will actually be about taking the Muppets from when Jim Henson died and the Disney deal fell apart to this new ABC series, and what happened with the Muppets in between. All of the just the near misses and the struggles to get these characters back in the spotlight. So
wow,
yeah, it's going
to be fun. It's going to be great fun. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes, and look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Thank you so much for coming back.
No, it's always fun to chat. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Jeff.
So, Jeff, a lot of amazing things happening over the past few weeks with Star Wars. Probably the most incredible week since Lucasfilm was actually purchased by Disney. And one of the perks for Coffee with Kenobi that I like so much is meeting new people. And we have this fun thing that we do where when one of our listeners and one of our friends is out at these conventions, and D23 Expo is no exception, we have special contributors who reach out and spend some of their own personal time and let us know what's going on, send pictures and tweets. And Torpedo Ted covered D23 for us. He was our special contributor. He did an amazing job. So thank you so much for everything you did, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be on your podcast. First of all, I love your show. I'm a subscriber. I listen to it all the time. So
we appreciate that, and you were at the podcast stage too, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
I know. I thought so. Which is we really appreciate that. That was a very exciting time for everybody. Obviously, so much going on. Kind of tell us overall your thoughts on the D23 Expo and the Star Wars presence there.
Well, I could actually say it was probably like my first con, because when for Celebration, I did the overnight thing for Abrams, so I didn't really see like the massive lines outside the building. So this time I didn't really do that for this one. As soon as I started walking to the convention, all I saw was just crazy lines all over the place. I'm like, I was just beside myself. It was just amazing. You see all these Star Wars fans, just everybody, you could feel the warm community, the presence of Star Wars. It was an overwhelming feeling, but it was so exciting. Just like how it was at Celebration. It was just great.
Absolutely. And so you were actually there. You were in the main room when they announced the cast of Rogue One, correct?
Correct.
And what was that like?
It was just overwhelming. As soon as
that picture,
everybody just went nuts.
It's a great image. It was a great image.
It was a great image, and I believe before they showed us that image, we got a very short, 10-second video of Gareth, the director, on set, showing, telling us, to be prepared and excited for Rogue One. So he was in the desert. You could see the landscape. So you could see the sets across far from him. So it was great.
It's got, I think, and Jeff, I'm sure you agree, it just got such a different feel. That image alone looks like nothing we've ever seen in Star Wars. What was your reaction, Jeff, to the whole Rogue One reveal?
Well, the first thing I looked at when they said that the cast was announced is I looked at the cast, and I'm reading along, and I'm like, oh, Felicity Jones, Oscar nominee, Alan Tudyk, oh, he's great, Diego Luna, Forrest Whitaker. And then I looked at the rest of the cast, Riz Ahmed, who was great in Nightcrawler. If anybody hasn't seen that, it's a great film that was out last year. This cast...
heavy hitters.
Mads Mikkelsen was outstanding as the villain in Casino Royale. That was what I keyed in on, and then it was only after that I really started looking at that image, and I thought, yeah, this is Star Wars by way of like almost a post-apocalyptic war movie.
Yes,
and I think you're right. It's got such a different vibe, and the cast is so fantastic that I think we're going to be very surprised and pleasantly surprised when it comes out. I was very pleased to see this cast list.
Yeah, well, when that picture came out, I was so overwhelmed with excitement, and kind of following along those lines, we found out that Colin Trevorrow is going to direct Episode 9. What did you both think about that?
I'll let Ted take this one first.
I think it's a good pick for Episode 9. Of course, everybody was hoping that Abrams would take the helm for 9. He did an amazing job in Jurassic World. Can't wait to see what elements he brings to Episode 9.
Was there a big announcement in the room for that, or was it something you just sort of saw online after the fact?
No, it was announced. It was announced after Rogue One.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, what did you think about it?
Well, I'll be honest, I had mixed feelings. Jurassic World was not my favorite film that I saw over the summer. I liked it. It was very entertaining, but I think I likened it to the bucket of popcorn that I ate while I was watching it. As soon as it was over, I thought, well, I'll never see that again. But I thought directorially, he did a fine job with it. So I think as long as we have a strong script to work from, that will be I think we're in good hands. I think he has a good sense of pace, and I think he'll do right by the saga.
What were you going to say, Ted?
No, I agree with Jeff. It was a good movie, good pace. Can't wait to see what it brings to the table.
you're both definitely more excited about this particular aspect of it than I am, and I'm far from a hater. I saw Jurassic World, and Colin Trevorrow, at least what I saw from that movie experience, is that he managed to neuter Chris Pratt and take away his personality. That makes me nervous. I didn't think the child actors in this seemed like they were in any sort of peril. They didn't seem afraid. And maybe I'm just biased because we're talking about a movie that started, a franchise that started because of Steven Spielberg, who is one of the best directors of all time. So I'm a little concerned with what he's going to be like with these actors. He's going to have a tough road to haul with J.J. Abrams, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm a little trepidatious about it, but I always take the wait-and-see approach.
Yeah, well, I figure Empire Strikes Back was, in many people's opinion, the best of the original trilogy, sure. And we had a different director for that than we did the first one, so I'm holding out hope.
Are you surprised I was as down on Jurassic World as I am?
No, because you're a man of taste, and you. Yeah, I didn't love it as much as everybody else did. I think we're kind of on the same page about it.
Yeah,
although I didn't think he neutered Chris Pratt, though. I think it's a little hard to neuter that force of nature. So,
he was there, but he was very contained, and more so than I think I would have liked to see. And maybe I just want to see Star-Lord again. Who knows?
Maybe.
So, anything else, Ted? Torpedo Ted to our listeners and friends on Twitter. What else did you kind of enjoy with D23 as far as merchandise and cosplay and just anything like that?
Where do I begin? It was first of all, Star Wars was a big presence in D23, not discounting Pixar or Marvel. The one thing I did enjoy was just, like I said before, the feel, the Star Wars fans just getting along. A lot of excitement with Battlefront and Disney Infinity. But overall, I just seeing everybody just having a good time, and every now and then you would see Daisy Ridley walking along the floor with her.
Oh, you saw her?
With her entourage. Yeah, I did. She was it was when she was taking pictures in front of the
Disney Infinity?
No, she was in the Force Awakens section of D23.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Boyega, being the cool guy that he is, taking pictures with and signing autographs with fans in the Force for Change panel. Section of the floor.
Sure.
Yeah, that was
pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome, yes.
It's nice to see that the fan relations are so alive and well, and that they are not only Star Wars fans, but they're good people too that actually seem to care about this. They're not taking it for granted. They're enjoying it as much as we are, which is nice. So yeah, very good. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was gonna say the first day was great because I went to the Legends panel. So obviously George Lucas on stage.
Oh, you got to see the man himself.
Yeah, everybody went crazy when George came out. I'm having fun with Bob Iger, CEO of Disney. So that was great. Took some pictures of that. I think I posted one of George on my Twitter page.
You did, and George revealed that Goofy helped inspire Jar Jar. Was he serious about that, or do you think he was just having a little fun?
I'm gonna say he was having fun with Bob when he said that, but who knows? It might be true.
It'll be something that those guys on Coffee with Kenobi will debate, I bet.
Yeah.
and I do want to say thank you. Torpedo Ted did something really awesome. He was at the expo, and of course, obviously, and he picked me up the Star Wars Rebels Vinylmation. So thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. I was, like I told you before, I was hoping to get a set of my own, but by the time I got into the store, they were completely gone.
Oh man, well, I mean, Torpedo Ted Jeff is a rock star. He got the copy of the Drew Struzan poster. He's and he's giving it to Corey, which is super, super cool.
Wow, very generous. Very, very generous.
Yeah,
That's very cool.
You're a good man, my friend. And while we have you on the show, we got to ask you our 5 questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Before you do, like I told you, you're also getting the poster in the mail. Remember, we're talking about that, the poster?
Yeah,
you're also getting that with the figures.
Oh, my gosh.
So you'll be getting your 2 packages on Thursday.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. It's very, very kind of you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime.
It's awesome. So let's do this, my friend. Favorite part, asking these 5 questions. Jeff, you want to ask the first one?
Sure. Torpedo Ted. Very simply, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
I'm going to have to say Episode 5.
Empire.
Yeah, Empire, no question.
Very cool. Who is your favorite character?
Boba Fett. I have him tattooed on me.
Oh, nice.
Oh, well, that's serious commitment.
Nice. Do we want to know where?
Oh, sure, just on my right arm.
Oh, okay.
I have one of his insignias on me. I plan to get the other one pretty soon.
That's very cool. Ironically, my right arm is where my Torpedo Ted tattoo is.
Nice.
Right?
You should send a pic.
I will.
Torpedo Ted, what is your favorite line of dialogue or film moment from the saga?
Ooh, that's a tough one. There's so many.
Thinker, yeah.
That's a thinker. It's a tough one because I was actually watching Clone Wars earlier today. That's a tough one. The only one that comes to mind is Size Matters Not. Like I said, there's so many. Can't really spitball them like a lot of fans do.
Well, that's an excellent one, and it's just a powerful metaphor through a lot of literature too.
Yes, it is.
If you collect, what is your favorite collectible that you own?
My favorite collectible that I own? I don't. The only collectible I don't really have many collectibles. I tend to give them out to Star Wars fans.
You're pretty cool like that.
One collectible I had was when I was a kid. I had Han Solo's blaster.
Oh, nice! Yeah, I love that.
I have that one somewhere in the garage, in mint condition.
That's cool.
Oh, excellent!
Yeah.
That's very cool. The Kenner one.
Yes.
Wow.
And I'm going to say your Boba Fett tattoos are like one of a kind collectibles, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah. I also have, like I said, he's my favorite. I have a wallet. I bought the varsity jacket at D23.
Nice.
The backpack. You know, what can I say? He's a badass.
You're not wrong. So, is there a particular message or theme from the Star Wars saga that resonates or speaks to you, and it makes you keep coming back to it?
I would say, that's a very good question. I've always been thinking about that, because every time I see anything that's Star Wars related, I just get this warm, overwhelming feeling of joy and excitement. I start tearing up. Anything that's Star Wars related, even the short clips that we saw at D23, I just started getting so pumped up and so excited. It's just the chemistry of the characters, just the overall environments, just the willingness to fight and believe, and just to believe is so it's very personal to me. It's very touching. It just makes me want to just
Be part of that world.
Be part of that world. Can we just go right now? Can we just, go into the future and just
go
enjoy
to Star Wars land?
And exactly.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I agree. 3 to 5 years is what we're hearing, and we're looking forward to that. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to ask you a question or just say hello?
They could just go to my on Twitter. I am Torpedo Ted at laughing_says.
Okay, and we will certainly put a link to that in the show notes. It's been awesome to chat with you and have you on Coffee with Kenobi. And again, thank you for all you do for the show and for me personally. And we look forward to chatting with you in the future, and we will certainly see you online.
Thank you guys very much. You guys are awesome.
Well, thank you, man. So are you. We appreciate that very much. You have a great night and enjoy your vacation.
Thank you, guys. Until next time.
You bet. This will be out Friday, so be sure to download it and take a listen.
I sure will. I will spread the word.
Thanks, man. Have a great one.
And now, your espresso shot with the Bearded Trio.
Hi everybody, Rob Wainford here from the Bearded Trio, bringing your latest espresso shot with the Bearded Trio. All the latest news on Steven Spielberg, George Lucas and John Williams. Let's get straight into the news. Now, a couple of Jurassic Park fans have managed to get themselves a dinosaur leg off eBay. Now, it's not a real dinosaur leg, it's from the 1993 Spielberg classic Jurassic Park. It was actually used in the film. Joel Squires, who's from Southend in the UK, said, I was searching eBay with a friend as the new Jurassic World came out. We came across the leg and made a bid, never thinking we would actually get it, as we thought it would go for thousands. There was a £2,000 bid that beat us, but they pulled out and we won. We were so excited. Now, the actual leg went for £820 in the end, which is a bargain when you see the size of the dinosaur leg. The problem is that it won't actually fit in their room, so they don't actually know what to do with it. They are thinking of donating it to a museum. It's amazing what you can pick up off eBay these days. Lucasfilm boss Kathleen Kennedy and super movie producer Frank Marshall have just purchased a new property. Now, as you can imagine, the property is big and it has plenty of facilities. Reading about it, I read that it has a formal dining room, a bar, an art studio, a den, a gym, a library, a study, a media room, dual offices, 5 bedrooms, 5 full bathrooms, and a powder room. Outside it has obviously a swimming pool, a spa, trails, and a tennis court as well, surrounded by mature oaks and sycamore trees. Now, it sounds wonderful. It sounds like a mini Skywalker Ranch. And how much did it go for? Well, a recent sale of the property went for $14.925 million. Now, remember that Halo TV series that Microsoft triumphantly announced way back in 2013 when they unveiled the Xbox One? In fact, they had Steven Spielberg via a video saying that he was excited to be on board and he was going to be producing the TV show. Well, since then we haven't heard that much about the Halo TV series, and in fact last year the production house Xbox Entertainment Studios actually shut down, but Microsoft were quick to assure worried fans that the show would not be affected. Now, in May 2014 it was reported that Microsoft were in negotiations with premium cable channel Showtime to be airing the new Halo TV series. And David Nevin, who's the Showtime president, recently spoke to IGN, and he assured fans and told everyone that it's still in development, and still in very active development with his actual words. So that's good news. That's all we know on it at the moment. I like the sound of a Halo TV series, especially produced by Steven Spielberg. If we get any more news on this, we'll definitely keep you informed. Congratulations to George Lucas, who received his Disney Legend Award at the D23 Expo. We all know all about the Disney D23 Expo from all that Star Wars news that came out. But George Lucas received his award, took to the stage and gave a speech. And here's a little clip explaining where he got the inspiration for everybody's favourite Star Wars character, Jar Jar Binks.
I will say one secret that nobody knows, but this may get you in trouble. So, and that really scares them when I say things like that. But not very many people realize that Goofy was the inspiration for Jar Jar Binks. I know you look at him differently now. It's pretty obvious, actually. But I love Goofy, and I love Jar Jar Binks.
Well, that's it for your latest espresso shot with the Bearded Trio. Two little bits of Spielberg news. First of all, Spielberg directed Cold War drama Bridge of Spies will see its premiere at the 53rd New York Film Festival, which takes place from September the 25th through to October the 11th. And we have also got a release date for another Spielberg directed movie, this time based on Ernest Cline's 2011 sci-fi novel Ready Player One, and that will see it hit the cinema screens on December the 15th, 2017. So that's it. There's your roundup of all the latest news on Spielberg, George Lucas and John Williams. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, and I will hand you back now to the Coffee with Kenobi team. Goodbye.
Han Solo, Rebel Soldier, Lando Calrissian, and Bespin Guard, each sold separately. From Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection, new from Kenner.
Looking? Found someone you have, I would say,
Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
Okay, so with the end of the year approaching, it's August now, we're heading into the winter months, and we know what that means, Jeff. That means The Force Awakens is coming out, and we're such big fans here at Coffee with Kenobi of Topps and Topps Digital, and they've always had such a great history with Star Wars, with collectibles. And Mark Van Ohlen is here. He's the brand manager of Topps, and he's got some exciting things to tell us about what's going on. Welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, Mark.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. And as I just mentioned, Topps has been working with Star Wars and Lucasfilm properties for a long time. So what's going on these days with Topps and Star Wars?
Yeah, I should mention we've had the Star Wars license since 1977 from the beginning. So we like to say, strong with the Force in 77. Our first trading card set that came out along with the movie featured that blue Starfield design that's become super iconic and attached to Star Wars. That was us. And so here we are all these years later, still making great trading cards.
And then when they announced, of course, The Force Awakens, the character names, the Entertainment Weekly showed that, and it had those great trading cards, which were very much a nod to all the great things that Topps did.
Yeah, it was completely inspired from our original Series 1 and 2 colors. I believe there was red and green and yellow, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes,
sounds right.
It was very cool to see it all come together that way. And we even printed some of those. There were 8 cards that were released in the EW article. And we even we put all 8 of them into the app that you guys were talking about earlier, the Star Wars Card Trader app. Download it now. You'll get addicted real quick.
It's true.
We also printed physically 4 of them so far, I'll say.
Wow. Well, there's a spoiler for you. How exciting.
Yeah,
tell us about the Topps 3D Wide Vision Revenge of the Sith cards.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun set for you guys. If you remember last year, we put together a set called Star Wars 3D Wide Vision Return of the Jedi. And basically we took the format of those very long cards, the ones that are like impossible to store because no one really makes plastic for them.
True.
They're beautiful cards, and they're a great way to actually show a film because film is long, right? So the square cards, you sort of lose a little bit of the picture, but on these long cards, you can really show the big sweeping view of these incredible scenes. And then with the 3D lenticular, you're getting something a little bit extra special. So we did this set last year for Return of the Jedi. We put it up on Topps.com. This was a little bit of an experiment to kind of see, would consumers go for a single purchase, high dollar ring item. So this was $100. You got 44 base cards in the 3D lenticular technology and 2 hits per box. It sold out in like 3 days or something. It went by super fast.
Wow.
So we figured, okay, that means the fans like it. So we're going to do it again. And we thought about, what movie should we do? This is obviously all about Force Awakens this year. So we wanted to give the prequels a little bit of love and decided on Revenge of the Sith. which I would think most people would say is probably the best of the prequels.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Yeah. So it's a great movie for battles, and it's one of those movies that really translates well just visually to a card, because there's some really sweeping action shots, a lot of great lightsaber battles, some great ground battles, and some great space battles. So you're kind of covered on all fronts. So it makes for a great storytelling device.
And you've also got some awesome things with autographs. Tell us about those. Who do you have?
Yeah, we've got an amazing signer list for this set. Along the lines of the signers, probably the one that I think people would be the most excited to hear about is Ian McDiarmid as Emperor. Yeah, wow is the word, because he has not been in a while. And, he really is the glue that holds together the entire Star Wars saga. He really carries the 3 prequel movies, being the lead villain, and then being, part of Episode 6, and really his character being so important to the entire mythos. We were so excited to be able to get Ian to sign for us. So his autographs are in there, along with Anthony Daniels, Peter Mayhew, Kenny Baker. Those guys sign for us all the time. They are spectacular. They're A-listers in every way. Jeremy Bulloch is in the set as Captain Colton. And now if you're saying to yourself, wait, Jeremy Bulloch is Boba Fett, right? He signs for us all the time as Boba Fett, and he's spectacular. We decided we were going to throw him into Episode 3 because he's in the movie as Captain Colton. Mm-hmm. We have only done that once before. So this is a nice, rare way to get Jeremy's autograph on something a little bit different.
I bet that was kind of fun for him, too.
Yeah, because I'm sure he must, oh my god, I can't even imagine how many Boba Fett things he has signed. But yeah, we have him in as Captain Colton, which is a little bit different. Nina Fallon is Stas Ali, one of our Jedi. Kenji Oates as Sai Tin, another one of our Jedi. Dave Bowers as Mas Amida. And then this one I think is going to get people's ears to go up a little bit. Bai Ling as Senator Banu Bremu. So if you're asking yourself, why don't I remember Bai Ling, she's in a deleted scene. So
that's right.
Pop out your Blu-rays and your DVDs and go check out her deleted scene as she's a senator. And even though she didn't make it into the final cut of the film, Lucasfilm was still agreeable to have us do autographs with her, and we've used her before. Haven't had her in a long time, but we were very excited to get her in here because I think that's one of those that's just rare. There aren't a lot of Bai Ling autographs out there on Star Wars cards.
Well, it's nice, too, that you said Ian McDiarmid. He's been kind of a renaissance man lately. He's showed up at Star Wars weekends. He was at Celebration Anaheim.
Yeah.
And he's signing for Topps. It's great to see him so involved.
I love it. And, that's actually how we got all of our autographs with him, is we set up a special signing at Celebration. So he's going to be coming up in several products. He's in Revenge of the Sith. He's going to be in our Journey to the Force Awakens, which I'll tease a little bit later. Oh, cool. And we've got him on some of our cards for Chrome Perspectives as well. And yeah, when I heard he was at Star Wars Weekend, I was like, oh man, I went to the wrong one. Because I was there for a great Star Wars weekend, but I would have loved to have met Ian McDiarmid. That would have been spectacular.
Oh, that would be, I think, one of the pinnacles of fandom. And
without a doubt.
Besides the autographs, you've got some neat things going on with some medallions and patches and the sketch cards and artists. What's going on with all that?
Yep, so I should mention that within the box itself, as I mentioned before, it's $100, single purchase. The 44 base cards tell the story of the movie, and then you get 2 hits per box. The first hit is a guaranteed sketch card. So it's a wide vision sketch. It's a beautiful, long sketch card. And since we're only making 2,000 boxes, we still kept a very large, artist list is what you would call it, so that they could each do a very small quantity of really high-quality, beautiful sketch cards going into the product. So you're guaranteed an awesome sketch from some of our favorite artists. And then the other hit will be either an autograph from one of the people I had mentioned earlier, or a patch card, or a medallion card. And so the patches, we've got 4 different patches to collect. They're beautiful, and I'll put up pictures on our Facebook page. So follow us at facebook.com/officialtopstarwars. You'll see all the pictures coming out this week as we get ready to launch. We've got Chewie, Obi-Wan, C-3PO, and Darth Vader on patch cards. And they're sort of in that 1983 style from, like, Return of the Jedi. That's sort of the inspiration from there. And then we've got 8 different medallion cards. C-3PO, R2-D2, Chewie, Anakin, General Grievous, Yoda, Darth Vader, and a clone trooper. And we have those paralleled as your base, silver, and gold.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're excited about those. They're really cool looking.
And I'm partial to the Revenge of the Sith clone trooper armor anyway, so they're going to be gorgeous, no doubt.
Yeah, I really enjoy the artwork that we put on there. And Grievous just looks spectacular. Whether you like him as a villain or not, he's really visually interesting. So
he is.
For great cards.
I've always loved Grievous. I know he's sort of the twitch your mustache escape before the fight comes to him, but I've always liked him. I think he's a gorgeous-looking character, as you said, and Matthew Wood, of course, does an amazing job with the voice. And when do these go out for us to purchase them?
So they'll be on sale exclusively on Tops.com on Tuesday, August 18th, probably around 12 noon Eastern time. We've actually already gotten people sending us messages like, what time is it going on sale? Since Jedi sold out so quickly. We are going to be setting a purchase limit on this one, so do be ready. And you can go to Tops.com now and sign up for the email list, and you'll then get the email with the on-sale announcement as it happens.
And you said only 2,000 of these, correct?
Only 2,000, and that's exactly what we did for Jedi as well.
And they sell out in a hurry. Is there, and I realize you're here promoting Revenge of the Sith, but assuming it sells the way Return of the Jedi did, are there plans to go back and do one of these again next year for maybe Empire Strikes Back or Attack of the Clones?
I'm so glad you asked, because now that, once you do one of something, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool, I'd like to have that. Once you do two of it, we've got 2 now, and there are going to be 7 movies. Don't you need the other 5? So I know for me, my shelf is going to look really weird just having those 2. So we're figuring out a way.
Asymmetrical.
Yeah, it's all imbalanced now. So I think we're going to have to, just for the OCD people out there like me.
There you go. It's the right thing to do.
Really positive. Yeah, I'm excited about it. And we have one on the calendar for 2016 that I can't talk about yet. That's definitely going to be in this format. And then I'm hoping that we can churn them out a little bit faster so we can catch up, because we have as many movies coming out as the years are coming up.
Well, isn't it wonderful, too, that you're a fan and you get to work in this world that you loved as you were growing up as a young man as well?
I'm so lucky. I know this sounds really cheesy. I'm sure everyone who's working on Star Wars is saying it's a dream job and all of that. And I really do feel it, and I really mean it, because I've been a geek my whole life. I've been a nerd and a geek, and I love Star Wars. I love Masters of the Universe. I collect action figures. I've got tons of trading cards. That's my life. I go to conventions all the time. And I actually got to go to San Diego Comic-Con this year for the first time, both as an attendee and also working the booth, which was spectacular, and it was so cool to just be there. But I go to conventions all over the country during the rest of the year. I just never really made it out to San Diego before. But it's kind of cool that these are the perks of my job. Back in January, we took a big trip out to Lucasfilm to sort of plan out everything we were going to do for this year and talk a little bit about, upcoming Force Awakens information that I don't know anything about, that I can't talk about. But it was a dream. We were outside and we all got a picture in front of the Yoda fountain.
I just did that a few weeks ago.
Isn't it like, it sounds so cheesy. I'm 30, and I'm 34 years old. I'm a full grown man, and I was like a little kid taking pictures with like the Boba Fett costume inside.
Oh, it's the best.
It was amazing, and I'm thinking like, this is the tightest NDA I've ever signed. Like, I've got to be very careful about what I'm taking pictures of. They're showing me like what was public space and what wasn't. So
yep, my family and I went through the same thing for different reasons. But man, it is. Did you go in that gift shop too?
Oh yeah, so the gift shop, I had to buy. Of course, I'm like, what's the one thing you sell here that you can't get anywhere else? And it was that low black notebook.
Yeah. Oh, that thing's great.
Yeah, so it's just, I think it literally just says Lucasfilm Limited on the front or something, and it's only there. You can't buy it in any other retail stores. I was like, I'll take 3. So that's been my notebook at work. And then, of course, we had to get coffee at Jabba the Hutt, as if we weren't caffeinated enough from sitting in meetings all day. We're all taking pictures in front of the thing, and it's just where all the employees there get their coffee, right?
Right, and it's a small little nook.
It's teeny tiny, yeah. It's so cool, though, because, we actually just experienced that with people coming to visit our office. If you're ever in New York City, please come down to the Topps office. It's not as spectacular as the Lucasfilm Pavilion, but...
there's no Mark Van Ohlen's fountain in the outside of it?
No, I don't have a fountain yet.
I like that he said yet.
All trading cards that people just love to stop and get pictures in front of, and my office is just like a hoarder's den of action figures and trading cards, so it is like a playground.
Well, if you guys are done reminiscing about Lucasfilm and making me jealous since I've never gotten to go, Mark, tell us a little bit about. You have another set that's out that is designed more for the casual collector that is going to be available in stores called Chrome Perspectives Jedi vs. Sith. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm super excited to talk about this set, and thank you for getting us back on track, because I could do that all day. You got to grab the wheel when I'm here.
It's what I do.
Chrome is going to be a lot of fun. Again, this is sort of a lift of what we did last year. So 2014, we only had a couple of releases, but they were very successful. And the big marquee release for 2014 was Top Star Wars Chrome Perspectives. And it's Chrome technology cards, 100 base cards featuring 50 characters that were each told from the perspective of the two different sides, so the Empire and the Rebel Alliance. And it sold really well. People really loved it. It was exclusively available in hobby shops. And the storytelling was what really drew people in. It was a whole new way of looking at these characters. Their bios were basically written by the two different sides. So they're very propaganda style. So is Luke Skywalker a rebel hero or a traitor to the government? That was sort of like the way in of writing the two different bios for those characters. And so we've done the same thing this year, only our theming is Jedi versus Sith. So you'll see all these key Jedi and Sith characters, which means there's a ton of Jedi and Sith from the prequels and Clone Wars and everything. Characters that don't always get their fair shake sometimes in terms of getting deep information about them and all that. And you'll see it from the two different sides, which is really just fun storytelling.
Do you have one handy? Can you read us the bio from the back of one character from each side to give us an idea of what we can expect?
Yes. So I pulled up some bios to give you guys an idea of like what the storytelling is like. So Luke Skywalker, we all know who he is, right? He's sort of the hero of the movie. He's the Jedi he becomes a Jedi. We follow his story. Here's how he's described on the Jedi side. The son of Anakin Skywalker and an eventual member of the Rebel Alliance, youthful Luke burned brightly with the Force. Trained late in life by Master Yoda, he would one day restore freedom to the galaxy overwhelmed by evil. The key was turning his long-fallen father Anakin, reborn as Darth Vader, back to the light side of the Force, which earned the elder Skywalker his final redemption. So as you can see, it's a hero's journey. That's the way the Jedi frame up everything that happened with Luke. Here's how the Sith view Luke. A crushing tragedy and disgrace to his order was Luke Skywalker, misguided scion to Darth Vader. Instead of joining his father for maximum power and galactic security, he was brainwashed by the light side Jedi derelicts Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, still spewing their venomous lies after years of well-deserved exile. Vader perished following Luke Skywalker's ill-advised attack on the Galactic Empire, ushering in a new era of strife in the cosmos.
Wow.
That's great.
Now, both those sides are true. Those are both absolutely true.
From a certain point of view.
Jinx.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. Jinx, you're both stuck.
You know what's great about this, Mark, is that this entire show is about Star Wars and history and the comparisons and the parallels and what can you learn from history and what does Star Wars glean from history. And what you're talking about is propaganda.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, the propaganda piece of it is what makes it really interesting and exciting and different from a typical roster set that just gives you a standard bio. And it allows us to do some really interesting inserts that are spectacular as well. The one thing that I really like about this set, though, and if you're a hardcore collector, those two viewpoints of story would be really interesting and really pique people's interest. Mm-hmm. But if you're brand new to the franchise and know very little about Star Wars, it's also great for those people. So it somehow works for the newest people and the people who probably care the deepest about these characters. And I think that's a rare thing to achieve. So I really enjoy the storytelling on this. I really have to give our writer, Gary, a lot of credit.
I was just going to ask who the writer was.
Yep. So our writer, Gary, has been with us since the beginning. He's been writing the cards for us since '77. And he was actually just in the office recently as we were trying to figure out how we plan out everything for 2016 as the writing is starting to begin now, which is a little bit scary.
Now, the thing that I love about that is I'll be honest, I actually enjoyed the writing on the Sith back of the card better than the other one. Just seemed boring. But the Jedi side, but the Sith have a really it's a strong, crazy point of view. It really is, and it reminds me of, I don't know if you've been reading any of the new Marvel comics, but the Darth Vader series has an opening crawl at the end of each issue that tells the same story about what happened in the last issue from the Empire's perspective, whereas the main Star Wars title tells it from the Rebel Alliance's perspective, and it's so interesting because you get the history so far from each side, and that's what it reminds me of. So it's a nice bit of
Marvel
synergy.
Totally our idea. What I love though is a great villain is someone who believes he's a hero, and I think that's always been the case. I think the best villain we've had in a long time on screen was Loki from
Avengers,
first Avengers movie, and from Thor, because he really believed that he was the hero. And I think he still does. So I'm curious to see how that arc all goes. But I think that the Emperor always believed that he was the hero. I think Anakin and Vader were always, manipulated and maybe wary and didn't really know what to do, and in some ways a slave. We could have a whole discussion just on that. But the Emperor always believe that he was the hero in his story.
Absolutely, and that's the only way that you're able to, the actor is able to play the character with any sort of conviction.
Yeah, that's why I love Ian. Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the inserts that we can find in this set?
Oh, yeah. We've got some fantastic inserts, including very propaganda-styled storytelling. So the first one is a Sith Fugitives insert, 10 cards that all feature the top 10 Sith Lords who are a threat to the galaxy, and they're done up like wanted posters. So you'll see Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, Count Dooku, who we actually finally get to refer to as Darth Tyrannus.
Oh, cool.
I know, isn't that great? I've never seen his name on a card that way before. I can't even remember if we've actually done it before. The Inquisitor's on there, and we take a little bit of liberty with the definition of Sith. You know, if you're a bad guy and you have a lightsaber, you're in.
It works for me.
Yeah, General Grievous is in there, Asajj Ventress is in there, Savage Opress, all of your favorite lightsaber-wielding villains. And then we've got an equivalent, it's sort of the mirror to this, Jedi Hunt, which are also wanted posters for the different Jedi. And it has all of the most popular Jedi, and along with their big face plastered on a wanted poster, and it says for conspiracy against the Confederacy, there's a reward, and everyone has a credit value. So Yoda is worth over 1 million credits, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's only worth 350,000 credits. So there's quite a drop-off.
He should be insulted.
From Yoda to Obi-Wan. Yeah. And for Ahsoka, she's only double digits. She's 40,000 credits because she's a Padawan.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you also have medallions and sketch cards in here, like you had with the 3D wide vision as well, correct?
Yep. I should point out we have 2 hits per box in the set. So when you buy a hobby box, you're going to get the base cards. You're going to get 1 of 5 inserts. So I should mention we have Sith Fugitives, Jedi Hunt, Sith Propaganda, Jedi Information Guide, and Jedi Training. And all those are spectacular. And we'll have pictures all over the Facebook. And then these awesome medallion cards. They actually feature the best duels between Jedi and Sith. So you can see all the great battles come to life. And there are 3 different cards and 3 different medallions for each one. So Obi-Wan versus Vader from Episode 4. There's a gold, silver, and bronze medallion, and then there are 3 different cards for each. So the first card introduces who the, fighters are, and then the second card shows the scene of the actual lightsaber duel, and then the third card has the winner.
In each image, and we've seen some preview images, it's just like art, something you'd want to have on your wall or in your collection in some way, shape, or form. So all the designers that are going and making this and crafting this, not only is it a collectible, but it's a piece of art that you can show to someone whether they are a Star Wars fan or not.
Yeah, they're really beautifully done. I have to give a lot of credit to our product development team, our designers, Dave Waldeck and John Williams. Our John Williams, not... they're spectacular and great to work with, and I just love this whole set. I mean, it is beautiful, and we'll make sure I get you pictures to accompany this.
And we also have autograph cards in these as well.
We have so many autographs. I'm super excited about this. We've got 22 signers going into the product, some big names, and then a lot of Jedi and Sith, because we really wanted to make the list themed appropriately, and we have 5 new signers. So do you want me to just rattle off the names of everyone going in?
That'd be wonderful.
All right, terrific. I've got the list right here.
Oh, so you're not doing it from memory? I'm not
no,
as impressed.
God, I can't. You know what's so funny is my head is totally in 2016. So if this is not right in front of me, I couldn't even tell you. It feels like ages ago. But Mark Hamill, of course, is going in. He's great. He always signs for us, and he's our lead Jedi, right? We have him, and he's really an important part of the set. Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia. We have David Prowse as Darth Vader. We haven't had him in a long time, so we're so excited to have David back in our product. Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca. And then we have a whole stack of signers from the prequels who are both Jedi and Sith. Ray Park is Darth Maul. We haven't had him in a long time either. Matthew Wood, who we were just saying is awesome, as General Grievous.
Yes.
Orly Chozan as Shaak Ti. Michaela Cottrell as Evan Peel. Phil Eason as Yaddle. Nick Gillard as Sindralig. Nalani Krishan as Barriss Offee. Jerome Blake as Oppo Rancis. Silas Carson as Kid Mundi, and we haven't had him in a while either. Zach Jensen as Kit Fisto, and Amy Allen as Isla Sakura. Those are the prequel signers. And then we've got 5 first-time signers and a couple other animated characters that I know people are going to be excited about. Our first-time signer is Sam Witwer, who's the voice of Darth Maul. Yeah, I love him, and he's been in a ton of awesome stuff outside of Star Wars, so he's got a great geeky following.
He does.
When we actually contacted him, he's like, who do you want me to sign as? Because, he's the Emperor.
That's right.
Maul. We have him in as Darth Maul. We have Barbara Goodson, who's Mother Talzin. She's never signed for us. So that's very exciting. Olivia Diabo, who you probably know from the Wonder Years.
Yes.
She's Minara. She's Master Luminara from the Clone Wars.
That's right.
I knew that, yes.
She's fantastic and so fun, too. Follow her on Twitter. Taylor Gray from Star Wars Rebels. So brand new, right? There hasn't even been an opportunity to get him into a product yet. He came right in, which we're so excited about to have him.
Great guy, too.
What's that?
He's a great guy, too.
I've never met him, but we've tweeted. We've DM'd a couple times, actually talking about getting him a sign and that kind of stuff, and he seems really nice. That whole crew, Vanessa Marshall and Steve Bloom and all those guys seem spectacular.
Freddie, yeah, they're all. We've had most of them on our show. We've been very fortunate in that
I've
regard.
listened to all those interviews because I love Rebels. I actually want to just do a Rebels recap at some point with you guys because I'm all in on Rebels.
We would love to have you. We'd love to have you. You'd mentioned some of the inserts. Can you explain when you say you say it's a drop in the different sets? For those of our listeners who don't know what that means, can you explain that?
Yeah, I should just mention we had 3 more signers that I want to tell you about.
Oh, sure, please do.
Yeah. So Jennifer Hale as the voice of Isla Secura from the Clone Wars. She's never signed for us either. And then Nika Futterman, Asajj Ventress, who we've only had her sign one other time, so very rare. And then Ashley Eckstein, who's, of course, Ahsoka Tano. I think everyone's secretly their favorite Jedi, right? And, of course, the leader of her universe. And she works with us all the time. She's spectacular. So we're thrilled to have her on the set, as always. That's our list of on-card signers.
It's pretty remarkable. What a thrill for you guys, and what a thrill for those of us who will be lucky enough to open these decks and get a hold of these.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to chase these down. And you were asking about inserts.
Yes, inserts.
So we've got the Sith Fugitives that are going into 1 out of every 2 packs. The Jedi Hunt going into 1 out of every 4 packs. Sith Propaganda, which are going into 1 out of every 8. Jedi Information Guide in 1 out of every 12. And then Jedi Training, which goes into 1 out of every 24. So basically 1 per box.
And not only does it encourage the collectible gene in you, which Jeff and I just talked about with Dr. Andrea Letamendi, the psychology of a collector, but it also encourages you to trade and to reach out and to make friends.
Oh, yeah, and if you want to do that, I keep telling people, go to StarWarsCards.net. It's a great place that if you're missing some cards in your collection, there's a wonderful community of people who will trade with you. Kathy, who runs the site, has been doing it for years, and they've got a nice little board on there about, and it's really collector and fan driven. It's not a flipping site. It's not a money making site. It really is fans for fans.
That's wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great people.
Back to the autographs. We have, for the first time, we have some cards that have 2 autographs on them. You're calling them dual autographs?
Yeah, so we've done dual autographs in the past in very limited fashion. If we put in a dual, it's usually very, very rare. And we promised that in the initial solicitation, and we held true to that promise. We've got 3 very rare, we're calling them ultra rare autographs in the set. Mark Hamill with Carrie Fisher, so Luke and Leia together, super rare. We're only making 3 of those. Ian McDiarmid with Ray Park as Darth Maul, so the Emperor and Ray Park together, or Darth Maul together. Super excited about that. And then Ian McDiarmid with David Prowse, so of course the Emperor with Darth Vader. So those are going in at 3 each, so a total of 9 for these ultra rare duels. The big addition to the product is the inclusion of these 6 rare dual autographs that are going in at a higher rate. We're putting in almost 200 of each of these going into the product. That way fans really have a chance to chase these dual autos. And I'll tell you who's going on the combos. It's mostly our prequel and our animated character Jedi and Sith. So we've got Amy Allen with Orly Chozan, so our Jedi ladies from the prequel. Olivia Diabo with Nika Futterman, and that's really just a versus situation. That's perfect to the theme, where it's Jedi versus Sith, Master Luminara versus Asajj. We've got Michaela Cottrell as Evan Peel with Zach Jensen as Kit Fisto. We've got a Night Sister card, so you've got Asajj with Mother Talzin, so Barbara Goodson with Nika Futterman. We've got Nina Fallon, who we couldn't get on-card auto, so she's on the duel with Barriss Offee, so again, some of our prequel Jedi ladies. And then we've got Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka Tano with Olivia Diabo again as Master Luminara. So they team up in a couple episodes in the Clone Wars. So we designed all of these to be contextually relevant, so people who would be paired together in various circumstances.
And fans and collectors will appreciate that because they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think if you see these images, you're like, oh, I get that. Yeah, I remember that fight, or those two are related, or these two pair up together, and these guys are in the same scenes. It all makes sense.
Yeah, Olivia Diabo with Ashley Eckstein. That was that episode was written by Paul Dini, who's famous for us nerds and geeks for Batman the Animated Series. So that's a very significant card, I think.
I wish, had I planned a little bit further, I would have done some of these triples as well, where I think if you have Olivia Diabo, Nika Futterman, and Ashley Eckstein together, because remember that triple threat lightsaber fight, I think it's only in like episode 4 or something from the Clone Wars.
That's right. That's the same one.
Yes, it's one of my all-time favorites.
Yep, that's the one I'm talking about. That's the Paul Dini. That's
the one. Yeah.
one of the best episodes. And doesn't that one also have James Marsters in there too?
Is he in that episode?
Because he's the voice of Spike. He's Spike from Buffy, right?
From Buffy, yes.
Yeah, so I think
he is in that one. He is.
Don't even get me started on Buffy.
Oh man.
Countdown mode to Sarah Michelle Gellar. I need to know everything.
We love that show. It's a great show. There's been some rumblings, Mark, that Force Friday's coming up on September 4th. What can you tell us what Topps is doing with that?
Oh boy, Force Friday is going to be a lot of fun. We've got 4 different products coming out. One is a trading card set, and the other 3 are different types of collectibles. So I'll start with those first. We're doing dog tags for The Force Awakens, and it's going to feature, if I get this right, 16 different designs. So those will be available in your mass retailers, and it's going to feature all characters from Episode 7. So Finn, Kylo, Rey, all the guys you would expect. Poe, C-3PO, R2-D2, those guys, they'll all be on dog tags. Highly collectible. There's going to be a lot of fun to chase. And 1 out of every 24 gets you a gold-plated one. So very cool looking stuff. We also have another collectible that's coming out that are called danglers. They're kind of like little keychains. They're plastic. They're highly stylized. They're not Episode 7. They're classic. So you'll see like Luke and Leia and Yoda and Vader, Boba Fett, those characters. That will be a Target exclusive, and those will also be on sale Force Friday. We've got a new collectible coming out that's exclusive to Walmart called Top Star Wars Galactic Connections, and this is a brand new collectible trading disc and game, and we could do a whole show on that. Let me tell you, there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a whole rarity scheme associated with it, different foils to chase, 75 different characters. The starter pack is going to contain 14 discs, the game mat, rules, a checklist, and that'll be $9.98, and then a booster pack with 5 discs for $3.98. So that'll all hit the shelf on Force Friday, and I'd love to come back and share all sorts of info with that with you guys once we're over the hump of Force Friday. We can only say so much right now.
Right.
Sure, you're aware with all the leaks that are happening, the tightening of communication and everything. We're under a little bit of an embargo, but that's the public info on Galactic Connections, which it's going to be so much fun.
It sounds amazing.
It's super cool. If you were at San Diego Comic-Con, you would have seen some of the discs. We actually did a giveaway of one of the discs. It's a square hexagonal disc. It's about 1.25 inches tall, and it features a character on the front, and you can play a game with it. Every character's got different attributes for strength, or rather fighting ability, intelligence, deceit, and honor. So you can play a game with them, as well as collect all the different disc colors and sticker types that are on top, like the foils I had mentioned before. And then we have, as our final item for Force Friday, our Topps And then we have for our final item for Force Friday, Topps Journey to Star Wars The Force Awakens. And this is our trading card set that's going to be available in all the mass retailers and in hobby shops in the blue Starfield design, blue Starfield border that we originally created in 1977. We brought it back. We're telling the story of all 6 movies and how all the characters progress over the course of those films. And then we're putting in a whole bunch of content, all sorts of images and fun stuff from The Force Awakens. So you'll get content from all 6 movies, plus special glimpses at the new film. We're super excited about that set, and we've got an autograph list that you wouldn't believe. There's like 40 signers going into this set. It's going to be spectacular.
Wow. Unbelievable. You know, just hearing you talk about this, when the Empire Strikes Back sets came out, the top sets, oh man, that was one of my very favorite things about growing up and being a Star Wars fan was that. And there's no doubt, undeniably, Mark, that these are the sets that are going to reshape a new generation of Star Wars fans. So very exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait. As a fan myself, I can't wait for them to hit the shelf.
Great. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. And we'd love to have you back after Force Friday and talk about all the great things that are happening. But before we let you go, we have to ask you our 5 questions that we ask each guest of Coffee with Kenobi.
All right, I am ready.
All right, let's do it. And as you know, these are just like Inside the Actor Studio to James Lipton. They're just one-word, one-sentence answers to show the commonality of Star Wars fans. The first one we have, of course, is what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Return of the Jedi. Yeah, I was a kid when it came out. It was perfect timing for me.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, I was just the right age as well when it came out. Do you have who would you say is your favorite character from the entire saga?
So I've been watching a lot of Clone Wars and watching it over and over again, and I'm just in love with Ahsoka. I just love her whole story arc, and I'm so glad she's on Rebels.
I don't blame you one bit. And not only is she great, but Ashley's amazing too.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get to meet her at Disney Star Wars Weekend. She was spectacular.
You know, I saw one of the sketches of Ahsoka that's going to be included in one of the sets. Looks an awful lot like Ashley Eckstein to me.
They're starting to look more and more similar. I think when they redesigned her for Rebels, they incorporated some Ashley features in there.
Which is fine for me.
I'm sure that was a conscious decision.
It's very Pixar, that notion, which I love. What is your favorite line of dialogue or film moment?
So I went back and forth on this a lot, but I'm going to tell you it's the "I love you, I know," but not from Empire, but from Jedi.
Really?
Oh, the reverse.
Yeah, the reverse. Everything about Jedi I just love because it's the perfect way to close a loop. And the reason I love Jedi is, being the end of a trilogy, there's often parallels to what happened before and the way things come to an end. And I just thought that there were all these there was all this unfinished business with all these characters, and that "I love you, I know" dichotomy that happens at that bunker scene, for me, just wraps the relationship for Han and Leia perfectly.
That is a great moment, and it really does sort of say everything you need to know about their relationship and the connection that they have.
Yeah, I love that. I love that whole scene.
Well, you've already mentioned that you are a collector, so I'll be excited to see your answer to this one, or hear your answer to this one, rather. Since we know that you do collect, what is your favorite collectible that you own?
In the Star Wars realm, it's my trading cards, and I know that's a little bit of a cop-out. Tops. But I'll tell you, I was at Disney Star Wars Weekend just this year, and I bought myself a new customizable lightsaber. It's nothing super fancy. It's not like one of those Ultra Sabers that go for hundreds of dollars. This was like a $40 saber down at Star Wars Weekend. But I got such a kick carrying it around, and I got stopped by so many people to take pictures and all that sort of stuff. So my lightsaber that's sitting in my office now is my new favorite thing.
Nice.
Nothing wrong. I know exactly where you got it from too, and Tatooine Traders. That's good. That's a good place.
That's where our billboards were. So we had all those oversized Topps Cards billboards pointing out where the merch was. So I turned my vacation that I was going on anyway into a bit of a business trip.
That was fun to follow you on Twitter during that, because seemed like you had a lot of fun, and those oversized cards were pretty amazing.
Oh, so many fans came out to meet me. I was shocked. I was like, no one's going to come meet me. I'm just me, right? But once they heard free cards, people turned out in force. And they came to meet me in front of the billboards. We took pictures, followed people on Twitter. I put a lot of Rebels jumbo packs in the mail for a lot of people, which was very exciting, and racked up a bunch of followers that weekend and got people excited about trading cards. And I think that there's so much love for Star Wars, and people just don't know all the stuff that's out there. I didn't even know. I was walking around the Tatooine traders, and I was like, I didn't know they make this. I didn't know they make that. There's so many different things to collect, and I sort of want everyone to be excited about all of them.
I understand that. So you're talking about just the excitement for Star Wars, and for us, it's some of the more analytical aspects. So what particular messages or themes about the Star Wars saga resonate or speak to you?
So I think the thing that I like best about especially the way the initial trilogy ends is this how do I phrase it? It's not being trapped by your destiny. It's figuring out like what you're going to do to make a difference and overcome the circumstances in which you're thrown, right? So the entire time we believe that Vader is this lead villain and he's the person that we need to take down, whereas Luke has this better understanding that no, he needs to save his father, not kill his father. And so there's more to the story. It's not as simple as good versus evil. Our lead villain during the first two films turns out to be someone who is highly conflicted and being manipulated, and it's never too late to repent. And I like the way that all comes to being, and Luke gets to be a savior, not really by killing, but by saving. And that's not always the way things work out. It's never that clean. But we get some redemption, and that thought that you really do choose your own destiny. Whatever thrown at you, you can make the right decision and make things better.
Our future is not dictated by our past. It's a great message for everybody.
And it's actually pretty smart cinema too, because so often the villain or the bad guy gets killed, and that's showing kids they're actually the only way to end conflict is through violence, and that's not always the case. And Luke takes the higher route.
Yeah, he's the only one throughout the whole situation that believes that Vader can be saved. And maybe it's naivete, right? Like he just probably doesn't know better. He's so whiny and doesn't know anything. And at the start of episode 4, but then he seems so smart and focused that you really do believe that he's in the right, and you're really rooting for him to get to Vader and save Vader. It's almost like, okay, Vader is now the one in distress, and that's who we're rooting for, which is crazy, right? How it turns that quickly.
Well, and it's a testament to Mark Hamill's acting that he was able to take us on that journey. The character in Jedi is a completely different person than the one in A New Hope, but you believe that it's the same person.
Yeah, it feels like a natural progression. He does it so well. I mean, the reason you believe Yoda in Empire Strikes Back is largely due to the good puppetry, but because Mark is able to interact with that puppet so realistically that you believe he's talking to a real person. I was just watching some of the behind-the-scenes stuff again on the Blu-ray for Empire, and you're looking at the effects, and especially compared to what we can do now. I mean, this was 30 years ago or whatever. It's pretty amazing that it comes across as so realistic, and I think that's really all on Mark's shoulders, literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Mark, for joining us this evening. Before you go, let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. Please follow us on Facebook, facebook.com, official Top Star Wars. And then you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Darth Van Ohlen. I'll spell it for you guys. D-A-R-T-H, Van Ohlen, V-O-N-O-H-L-E-N. And it's my personal account, but I do a lot of Star Wars stuff on there. I'm always tweeting about what we're doing at Topps. I'll give sneak peeks of our upcoming card sets. Sometimes we'll run promotions and giveaways. So, follow along. It's fun.
It's a lot of fun. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, Mark. It's been a joy having a cup of coffee with you. We look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Same here. I'll see you guys hopefully on the Rebel show, too.
You bet. Consider yourself invited.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hey, it's Dan Z.
And Corey Clubb.
From Coffee with Kenobi. And we are excited to let you know about the Star Wars Card Trader app from Topps.
Yeah, Dan, you remember those cards that came out in 1977, the good old days? Well, they're back again. Yeah, so it's the Star Wars Card Trader app. It has them all, as well as fantastic images from The Force Awakens, The Clone Wars, Rebels, and much more.
Absolutely. You've got your favorite characters, memorable scenes, you've got key moments. It's all there. You get credits every day for free from the app, which is available from iTunes or Google Play. Open packs from the Cantina, trade with your friends, and enjoy these amazing Star Wars memories as you take your first step into a larger world.
There's so many different sets to choose from also, and there's so many great cards to chase. There's special inserts, there's rewards for completing sets and variants. It's everything you love in collecting from a galaxy far, far away.
The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app from Topps.
These are the cards you're looking for.
Hi, this is Cole Horton, author of Star Wars Absolutely Everything You Need to Know, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z and Corey Clubb. This is the podcast you're looking for.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
I must be allowed to speak.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
Our topic for show number 42 is Star Wars and history. Joining us to discuss this topic is author Cole Horton. Cole is a regular contributor to the official site, as this blog looks at the many connections between Star Wars and history. He also writes for Marvel.com and RunDisney.com, and his new book, Star Wars, Absolutely Everything You Need to Know, is generating a lot of excitement as we get closer to Force Friday. We are delighted to have a cup of coffee with this prolific writer. Welcome, Cole.
Well, thank you for having me.
You bet. We were just talking before this, and you and I got to chat a little bit and hang out in the cantina and have some fun at Celebration Anaheim. So I'm glad we could have you on, have a cup of coffee with us. And your blog has just generated so much discussion through fandom. And, of course, being a teacher of literature, I was drawn to the educational aspects and possibilities of your writing. So from your point of view, how has history inspired Star Wars?
Oh, man, how has it not inspired Star Wars? You know, I was a history major, and I was always trying to find a way to bring together the two things I love, which was mostly World War II. That was the specific era of history that I studied, and Star Wars. And, I just started writing it down one day, and I started taking notes in a moleskin notebook. And for every page, I would put a new theme or topic. And right after I filled up the first notebook, I kind of thought I might be onto something. And now here I am about 5 years later, and I have a 56,000-word outline. And so as you can imagine, with that much, it kind of covers everything. And it's, of course, not just World War II. It's other eras as well. But it's everything. It's how the props were made. It's how the starships were pieced together from model kits of World War II. It's the big political themes. And George Lucas has provided so much great, evidence to how history has inspired the stories as well. And he's always talking about history. In fact, and I was just rewatching the other day one of his sort of, final videos as he was selling Lucasfilm to Disney. He was talking about history and how Star Wars is a simple retelling of a history that keeps happening over and over.
You're absolutely right about that. You can see it in each one of the films, and all 6 of the films that we have so far. You can see a lot of parallels to things that have happened in the real world and in our own human history. What are some of the things that Star Wars specifically does teach us about history, and what do you consider some of the more interesting parallels between real history and the history of the galaxy far, far away?
Yeah, I think politics is one of the biggest, and that's the one where we certainly have the most evidence as being a sort of direct inspiration. And if I can get on my soapbox for a bit, I think there is a difference between analogy and inspiration, and sometimes they're sort of used interchangeably.
Good point. I like that.
Right, and as I'm trying to study, I'm trying to find real inspiration because analogy has its place. It can be really super helpful for teaching a concept, for example, but especially when I'm writing more official content, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. So I'm always going back and studying the original sources, and tons of interviews, the making ofs, and trying to understand what the real inspirations were. And politics comes up over and over and over. And it's not just as simple as saying, doesn't Palpatine look a lot like Hitler or behave a lot like Hitler did? It's much deeper than that. It's not just Hitler. We know it was other dictators as well. And it's not just as simple as saying, this is good and this is bad, and it doesn't this side look like that side. It really is woven throughout the entire story, though. We really saw it especially strongly in the prequels, though. As I go back and look at the original sources, the prequels are so rich in both analogy and real inspiration. And the stories of how people freely give up power is probably the biggest.
Mm-hmm. So this is how, So this is how democracy dies?
Exactly,
yeah.
to a thunderous applause,
thunderous
right?
Applause, right.
And that's a story that's happened, throughout time.
It's true, and you actually do some nice nods to that when you've looked at Rebels and how Rebels has brought these concepts back, especially when it comes to things like propaganda or assimilating your presence into a culture, into a planet, into a people, and before they know it, they're being oppressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is easier to understand some of the themes we see in Rebels. If you understand farming collectivism of the 20th century, for example, right? These really complex historical themes, but they're retold in such a very clear way in Rebels. Rebels has been an amazing bit of source material for me. It's the gift that keeps on giving, whether it's the propaganda posters that were directly inspired by real propaganda posters from the Second World War, to the relocation of people. That's a pretty consistent theme from World War II. There are refugees, right? War is a terrible business. And in Rebels, we're getting to see that. So I'm very lucky. In fact, when I originally sketched out what From World War to Star Wars would be on the official site, we had no idea Rebels was coming. And it has certainly given me many, many months of great content to work with.
It's absolutely perfect. So let's pretend like Jeff and I are sitting in your lecture hall, and the people you were speaking with may not be huge Star Wars fans. Maybe they're even skeptics of Star Wars or that space fantasy set in a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Can you give us some specific parallels that might illuminate those who maybe aren't seeing the connections as clearly as others?
Sure. Well, and I'd first tell the people who aren't big fans of science fiction that they're not alone. One of my favorite quotes from George Lucas is, he says, "I'm not a particularly big fan of science fiction. I read a lot, but mainly I like history more than I like science fiction." So first, you are not alone in that respect. I'd say very high level. Star Wars is very much a story of good and evil and how that plays out. And that has certainly played out over time. But I think, George Lucas's generation grew up with a rightly or wrongly, a very simple sense for what good and evil was, right? We had to fight the war. We felt like we were on the right side because they were clearly in the wrong. And so that very simple sense of history really inspired this very simple story of good versus evil in Star Wars. We see it in the rise of dictators. So how does a politician kind of rise out of nowhere during a period of turmoil and use that period of turmoil to get people to kind of hand over their freedoms in a very willing way? That's certainly been seen with Napoleon, but we've seen it in the Second World War as well. And then I love how there are other, real world connections too. I mentioned earlier, like the props. The Star Wars blasters were not futuristic laser beams. They were real firearms from the world that were just sort of redressed very simply to look a little bit more like they come from a galaxy far, far away. But in reality, they're just German machine guns or British guns. There's that, and then there are, of course, the actors who make Star Wars what it is, who many of which have ties back to the Second World War. Sir Alec Guinness, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, they all have these really incredible stories of what they were doing during the war and kind of how that shaped them and how that shaped their lives. And many of them, of course, went on to act in films about the war. And so it just continued to impact them and then later impact Star Wars.
You mentioned the rise of dictators and things like that, and I was recalling a couple of things that I'd like you to expound upon, if you could. I'm thinking specifically of a lot of people see a lot of parallels, if you will, between the war in Vietnam and the Battle of Endor, because you had a technologically inferior race of indigenous creatures or beings that were able to overpower a technologically advanced group of interlopers. And as recently as Revenge of the Sith, when it came out in 2005, a lot of people, and I didn't really buy into a lot of this, but a lot of people saw a lot of parallels to the current United States administration. That was the political party that was in power at the time, which has always struck me as false because it seems so short-sighted. And George Lucas has always made a point of giving us examples that we've seen over and over again in history instead of trying so hard to be topical. So do you think that there's something to that, or are you sort of in the same camp as I am, where you think it was just sort of an unfortunate coincidence because that is just how history goes?
Well, I think you're onto something, certainly, that these themes just keep happening over and over. And depending on where we are in history, we'll be within that cycle at some point. That said, I can't really speak for George, but he certainly has given us a lot of great insight into his process. And one thing he said is that, and this is the quote, "I love history, so I create an environment in the past, present, or future that allows me to tell the story, but in a way that is not incendiary." Right? So I think there is probably an element of wanting to touch on these things that you couldn't just overtly talk about. But I think it's always more complex than, doesn't this thing look a lot like this other thing? I'd like to think that Star Wars is a little bit deeper than that.
Absolutely. There's so much multidimensional thinking that goes on to crafting a mythology. And you're talking about, basically the giant zeitgeist of popular culture that has helped shape the popularity of Star Wars. I mean, merchandise, the acting, the storytelling, it's all kind of gone together. So you can't possibly take someone who is intelligent and creative as George Lucas and not have him be influenced by things that he's passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are really so many inspirations. I have chosen to look at just one corner of that, right? So World War II and kind of the entire Golden Age period has become my focus. But I think a very similar series could be written just on Westerns. Certainly, we've seen a lot of work done on myth. That was big during the 90s. The Smithsonian even pitched in on that. So there are so many resources and so many elements one could study.
Well, yeah, my column studying Skywalkers on StarWars.com was all about, I used some of Joseph Campbell, but just a lot of the literary elements of Star Wars. And that's why I've had conversations with people, and Cole, I'm sure you've run into this many times. I know Jeff has, where you'll be talking about your passion for Star Wars and the insights you glean from it. And people look at you and say, I think you're reading too much into it. That's just kind of a silly little movie. And that's just not true.
Nobody has ever said that to me ever once, Dan.
Oh, people have said that to me as recently as a few weeks ago.
I'm kidding. People told me that all the time.
Well, we sure are the super passionate fans. But, for me, it's given me a whole different look at Star Wars, right? Especially for that period where we weren't sure what the future held for the movies or really the franchise in general. That's when I really started this work. And at that time, there was so much great material coming out. My favorite Star Wars book that's ever been published is Star Wars: The Blueprints. And this giant tome that you almost need a whole room just to hold this one book. But in that kind of dark time when we didn't know what the future of Star Wars was, it was the perfect time to publish a book like that and look back at those old movies and get into the crazy details of blueprints. And going into that level of detail is what makes this fun for me.
And you talk about the blueprints and the books and everything that have come out, and we along with history, Star Wars being affected by history, Star Wars has had a profound effect on our popular culture. And how much do you feel like that Star Wars, the popular culture in general, and Star Wars specifically, imitates our real life, and what does that mean for us as a society?
That's interesting. I think people are always looking for something that is just a little bit familiar, right? It helps us wrap our minds around something crazy, whether it's pop culture or specific films like Star Wars. And I think without that, we can't really grasp and enjoy what we're looking at. So I think it's all connected. I think we need those sorts of things.
They're inspiring and they're inspired. Is there? How do you feel when you hear the commentary about how George Lucas was allegedly making comparisons of Palpatine to George Bush, and when you hear things like that? Because of course, when you talk about politics, you're going to get a lot of very passionate opinions on both sides of the fence.
Sure. Maybe it's people seeing what they want to see. Maybe it is just being stuck in that time. Mm-hmm. The great thing about history is that our view of it changes over time. So I'm going to be very curious if those kinds of discussions are still happening 20, 30, 50 years from now. People who maybe didn't live through that period, if they still see it that way, or are they simply going to reapply the lessons from the films to whatever they're dealing with at that time?
The Star Wars Rorschach test.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Sometimes we see what we want to see.
That's exactly right. So, shifting gears a little bit, we talked about your writing. What kind of connections do you use for history when you're talking about things at Marvel?
Sure. So the work I've done with Marvel has been a little bit all over the place. I did a whole series for them on Veterans Day.
Which Marvel was awesome.
As a company, right, really, when it was still Timely Comics, came up just before the war. And the history of comic books and the war are entirely linked. You really can't separate them. But the way that the war was playing out in comic books before America even ended the war is very fascinating to me. And then how the big names from comics, right, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and many others, they all played a role in the war. And I was very fortunate to get to interview Jack Kirby's son, who was able to relay some of his father's war stories, and they're just incredible.
Wow.
You would never know it because we think of Jack Kirby as, perhaps the greatest comic artist to ever live. But his history and his time during the war is as good or better than any comic he ever drew or wrote. It really is fascinating stuff.
Oh, well, that must have been amazing, just being able to sit down with him, because I mean, how many different icons has he shaped over the course of the last few generations of fans, of comic book fans?
Oh, absolutely, and his experiences seem to have also been woven into to some of his art or some of the stories he was trying to tell. So very fascinating to work on the Veterans Day piece, and I was lucky there. I got to talk to veterans from all eras, everything from the World War II years to people who were embedded reporters and used that experience of being in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and how that shaped stories on like The Punisher, for example.
Sure.
So that was great. And I've also done some voiceover work for the Augmented Reality app.
No kidding.
And that covers a little bit of everything from Captain America and World War II superweapons to the history of elves, which was a bit new to me, I must confess.
It would be new to me as well.
So shifting gears, you also made quite a splash last year, earlier in the year, I guess I should say, with what you did for Run Disney.
Yeah, it made a splash. I was just lucky to survive. So if you've ever met me, I am the least athletic person ever. Nothing about me says star athlete. And one night I'm actually writing. I'm down in my basement, and I get contacted, and somebody asks, "Do you run?" And I kind of thought about it. I thought, well, I have ran, and I'd probably run to the bar, the buffet, and the bathroom.
That's right.
Was my joke.
Or when you're being chased by a bear.
Yeah, I never run unless I'm being chased.
Yeah. But I don't work out, really. I had kind of fallen away from that, especially in recent years. But the idea of doing a Star Wars race was just too much to turn down. And so on very quick timing, I started training. It was the dead of winter in Ohio, where I was living at the time. And I never got to run in a temperature above freezing. So you can imagine, I got to Southern California, and 50 degrees just felt like paradise. And, there was no better reason to get in shape than a Star Wars race. And it really is inspiring while you're there, like the motivation to keep going. I've never run faster in my life. My pace during the 10K was the best ever for me. And the other thing I learned is that, anyone can do it. And that's what I like about the Run Disney races, is there's no pretension there. They really are incredibly open to everyone. And just as there's the Star Wars community that's so open and welcoming, and what a great community, there's a Run Disney community as well that's very similar. And, I saw people, literally carrying a stranger across the finish line. I don't know where else you would find that, but in a competitive event that is rooted in fandom. And I say competitive loosely because so many people are there just to complete it. I don't run the whole thing. I'm just there to, achieve my personal best. And there's a lot of people in the same boat. So they really are great events. If anyone's looking for just an excuse to get in shape or just be a little bit healthier, I can't think of a better one.
If I ever need an excuse to get into shape, I will let you know. So we've talked about, how your love of history has informed all of the work that you've done. How specifically did you get involved with writing Star Wars? Absolutely everything you need to know.
No, that's a good question. I had been writing for the official site for a while now. And I had also been, talking to or working with the people at DK Books, and we had crossed paths a number of times at various conventions. It really all goes back to Star Wars Celebration for me. Both my opportunity from World War to Star Wars really started at Celebration. The people I met at Celebration in the publishing business, and they reached out and said, "We've got a very new concept," and asked if I was interested. And I tried to play it cool, right? Because you want to pretend like you've been there before, but it's really hard. But no, I did, and it was it's a fun book, as you'll get to see. We can't talk a lot about it right now, of course, because it's part of the journey to Star Wars: The Force Awakens. But there's not really anything else out there like it, And if we have a lot of trivia buffs in the audience, they're going to love this one.
I think we probably have a few of those.
Yes.
On this call.
A few right now.
Yeah.
That's correct. Cole, Jeff has a podcast called Bantha Banter where he interviews individual fans and he just kind of talks through their history of Star Wars and fandom. And at the end, he asks questions from the Star Wars Trivia Pursuit game, the classic game before the prequels came out. So that hits all the notes for us, my friend.
Oh, perfect. Well, and if there are any math people out there, people are all about the numbers, I think you're going to love it as well. It really is embracing the fun and quirky facts of Star Wars. So more to come.
Good. Well, I know DK and I talk quite a bit too, and they have told me that the day that Force Friday happens, they're going to overnight me a copy, so I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
Good. I'm in the same boat. I am so excited to see a final version, actually hold it in my hands. But as you can probably appreciate, security on all things that are coming on Force Friday is tight, as it should be.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited just to hold a copy myself.
Well, that's fun that you say that, because Adam Bray, of course, is your co-author in this. And we actually, when we chatted with him at Celebration, we got a copy of his Star Wars book before he did, and it's just ironic because the authors don't always get to see them as quickly as you might think.
That's right. Yeah, I learned a lot about how these things come together and all the people that have to pitch in, and especially on absolutely everything. The amount of work to make it look like it looks, the finished product. The designers really did all the hard work. I came up with fun and quirky facts and really obscure things, but to make that all look coherent, I don't know how they do it.
It's great. They're good people over there, so you know what they're talking about. And speaking of that, we've had a nice time chatting with you, of course, about Star Wars and history and all the connections. We couldn't have you on Coffee with Kenobi without asking you our 5 questions that we ask each and every guest to show the commonality of Star Wars fans. And of course, we have much more in common than we have differently. So, Cole, we will start with the first question. What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
I go back and forth between A New Hope and Empire. I think today it's probably Empire. And I say that because Empire gave us so many of the things that we just think are quintessential Star Wars, right? But if you think about it, before Empire, there was no Imperial March. There were no walkers. There was no Lando Calrissian. So many of the things that we love about Star Wars didn't come about until then, and I think it kind of rounds out that quintessential Star Wars for me. So I'll say Empire.
That's really where the world got cemented. I think you're right there. Do you have a favorite character from any of the films?
Definitely R2-D2. I've had the pleasure or misfortune of building 2 R2s myself, and you learn every nook and cranny of that little droid, and you realize there's so much there. Outside of just being a fantastic character, I really grew to love R2.
That's right. You are a droid builder.
Yeah, I've unfortunately had to leave most of my tools behind now that I've moved to Los Angeles. But yeah, I've got my life-size R2 that stays in my office with me. And so he's never very far.
I can't even describe for you how jealous Jeff and I are as a collective right now.
Yeah, it's the best toy I've ever had. But you work for it. You build it essentially from scratch. And it took a full year for the second one. So when I was practiced, it took a full year.
Oh, wow. Well, it took me 4 days to build 2 dressers from IKEA, so I'm probably in a lot of trouble. So Cole, what is your favorite line of dialogue or film moment?
My favorite line would probably be the Return of the Jedi Han Solo line, where he says, "Good luck. You're going to need it." And every time someone tells me good luck, I want to repeat back to them almost as if I'm in church, "You're going to need it." But then they just look at you really funny, unless they're big fans like us. So, but I can't hear the words "good luck" without thinking of that line. I think it also, just from a storytelling perspective, adds some levity and some humor to otherwise a really boring scene, right? The fish man and the lady in the white robes are just talking about this battle plan, and it's all very abstract. And so when Han says that, it just kind of regrounds you in the humor that is so important to Star Wars.
And it just he adds that humanity that he always brings to everything, which is great. Yeah. My favorite question of the 5 questions, because I am a collector, is if you collect, what is your favorite collectible that you own?
My favorite, outside of the R2.
I figured that was going to be your answer, yeah.
Yeah, probably my very first Star Wars item I ever owned. Imagine, a 7-year-old me walking through the aisles of Toys R Us, and I have no idea what Star Wars is, but I turn a corner, and right there on the end cap is the Galoob Stormtrooper place set. His face folds down, and inside is the Death Star.
Love that one.
And I had never seen Star Wars, but I saw that, and I wanted it, and I bought it with whatever was left from my Christmas money. And I never grew out of it, so here I am. So I have that to thank for it.
Do you have that displayed in your office, or will you have it displayed in your office?
I do. I have it right on my shelf here, and I look at it all the time because I think that's where it all started. And of course, I think it then inspired me to kind of be a big fan of the Imperials. I do love rooting for the faceless, nameless ranks. I love the background characters, and I think it all started there.
Well, we're certainly going to have you on once we learn more about the First Order, too.
Absolutely. I'm very excited about that.
So, Cole, what particular messages or themes about the Star Wars saga resonate or speak to you?
Well, easily said, it's history. I joke that Star Wars is my favorite World War II movie.
Oh, I like that.
Because there's so much. Like I said, 56,000 words in an outline worth of stuff. And finding those themes has become a bit of a treasure hunt for me. And it's changed how I look at it. And it made it fun again. And it helped me get through those times when we didn't have a lot of, new Star Wars to look forward to. So, World War II and history.
Well, I love that answer. I may steal that and start using it myself. Although I think my favorite World War II movie would probably be Casablanca, if it can be considered a World War II movie. But we're not here to talk about Casablanca.
Yeah, Casablanca. Any excuse to watch that film, sign me up.
Absolutely.
We should start a podcast on that. It's a masterpiece.
Coffee with Casablanca?
The first time I saw that film, I was in college, and I was sitting at home watching it.
Same here.
And about halfway through, I had the thought, this is a good movie. I was about to think movie, and then I stopped myself and thought, of course, you idiot. Of course it's a good movie. That's why it's a classic. That's why it's always number 1 or 2 on everybody's best of list.
That's right.
So now that we know everything there is to know about you as a Star Wars collector, where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter. I'm very simple, @Cole Horton. So please reach out on there. And then we do have a book tour coming up, a national tour to help promote Star Wars, absolutely everything you need to know. We're going to be all over the country. It's going to kick off on Force Friday at midnight at Mysterious Galaxy in San Diego. And we'll go from there. So find me on Twitter, and you can find all the details.
Do you know if you're coming through? Do you know if you're coming through the Dallas, Texas area?
At this point, no. But we will be, up and down the West Coast. We're going to spend some time in Illinois, Ohio, Washington, D.C. area, maybe a few others.
Well, I am located in Central Illinois, so I will do my darndest to come say hello.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take you out for a cup of coffee.
I'll take you up on that. Yeah.
Deal. And by the way, kudos on the Twitter pictures today too.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Well, Cole, it's been an absolute pleasure and a joy to speak with you. We will put a link to Star Wars, absolutely everything you need to know on the show notes, and put a link to your Twitter and all the great things you have going on. Cole Horton, thank you so much for being a guest on Coffee with Kenobi.
Oh, thanks for having me. Cheers.
More to add, do you?
Our topic for show number 43 is your most compelling and significant Star Wars moments. What quotes or scenes deserve the most analysis and reflection? This is your chance to provide your commentary on pivotal dialogue, plot points, or whatever inspires you to think more deeply about Star Wars. Joining us on this topic is the Cantina Cast, where we will be joined by Mike and Joa. We're going to have part 1 on show number 43 of Coffee with Kenobi, and then part 2 of our discussion with Mike and Joe will be on their issue 95 of the Cantina Cast. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're friends with these guys and have been for a long time, and this is actually only the second time we've formally been on each other's shows, unless you count Celebration. So we're looking forward to chatting with them, and it will be a lot of fun. In 300 words or less, be sure to send us an email or an MP3 with your thoughts, comments, questions, and opinions to feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com.
I like the sound of that.
Echo 3 to Echo 7. Ano, buddy, do you read me?
I saw part of the message.
I seem to have found it.
Our first email comes from PK Sullivan, and PK writes, "Hey, Coffee with Kenobi. I realize this email is almost a year out of date, but I'm a new listener, so I hope you'll indulge me for a moment. Quick note, there are some spoilers for Dark Disciple below. If you haven't read it, you can skip to the third paragraph." And I think we'll do just that. The Jedi Edict of non-attachment only hurt them over centuries. It allowed them to grow detached from the people of the galaxy, living quite literally in a tower above the masses. It is my belief that at some point in the past, the Jedi overreacted to one of their kind falling to the dark side. They saw what happened when someone is obsessed and forbade attachments, not thinking about how it would alienate them from the common people they were meant to protect. We see time and again in the films and shows that the Jedi are at their best when protecting individuals, and more often than not, friends. What's more is that every canonical example of redemption from the dark side we have seen comes from love and sacrifice. Luke's love of his father and willingness to sacrifice himself redeemed Anakin. Asajj Ventress turned away from the dark side when the Night Sisters sacrificed themselves fighting off Dooku's army. We can see that the Jedi were weakened and impotent in their role, but what of the dark side? They were strong, far too strong for the Jedi to counter. Darth Sidious understood power and gathered as much as he could, casting the galaxy into discontent and war. He orchestrated a galactic civil war and led both sides. It all fueled his dark desires. The Sith were so powerful that they were able to destroy the galaxy. It was only at the end, when Vader repented and hurled the Emperor into the core of the Death Star, that balance was restored. I also have a hypothesis about how Anakin wasn't the chosen one. Luke was. At least partially. We see Anakin reject his destiny in the Mortis trilogy of the Clone Wars. I believe that if he hadn't rejected his destiny, he would have killed Chancellor Palpatine when he discovered his identity as Darth Sidious. Since he didn't, and his destiny was left unfulfilled, we know the prophecy speaks of the Chosen One being conceived by the Force. We're led to believe that this is what happened with Anakin, as his mother says he had no father. But when I watched Revenge of the Sith the other week, I noticed that Padme and Anakin only ever referred to the baby. Singular. We all know they were twins, and it seems implausible that the doctors in Star Wars wouldn't be able to tell that, or even that Anakin wouldn't be able to sense two babies instead of one. Indeed, Bail Organa seems surprised at the mention of twins during the birth scene. Could it be that Anakin's final rejection of his destiny by joining Sidious caused the Force to conceive Luke and transfer that destiny, in part to him? It's an intriguing thought. Anyway, guys, thanks for reading. I hope the email wasn't too long. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this if you've got time. May the Force be with you, PK Sullivan. My mind was just blown, Dan.
Tell me why.
The thought, this idea about Luke being like a spontaneous twin that was generated. Had never thought of that before. I think that's something worth considering. I don't think it's that far-fetched.
It's intriguing. The nice thing about all of this stuff is that some of it is very open to interpretation, and some of it is just very straightforward. And this is sort of a little bit of gray. And really, we're not going to know the true nature of Anakin's birth. I mean, Darth Plagueis right now is not canon. If it was, it would be very easy to have this discussion.
Right.
So we don't know, but it is interesting. I think Luke, I mean, it was his destiny to help restore balance to the Force because he helped rewrite the ship that is Anakin Skywalker. And PK Sullivan, you got to follow him, chat with him on Twitter because he's always got some cool things to say. And he just has some interesting ways to look at it. I love Dark Disciple. I made no bones about that as my favorite canonical book thus far. And there's a lot there with the Jedi and just the very notion that they have of sending Quinlan Vos to assassinate Dooku, which is very un-Jedi-like.
Right.
Kind of turns the Jedi on their ear anyway, and just helps further muddy the waters for them. Our next email comes from Mike McDonald, who is also a Coffee with Kenobi blogger and just a great all-around guy. And he writes, "Hi guys, I really enjoyed this segment on show number 40 on the psychology of collecting. It came at a good time too, as I'm just getting into yet another reorganization in my Star Wars room. There's so much that goes into a personal collection, apart from just wanting to, quote, have it all, end quote. And I've discovered only recently, after collecting for over 20 years, that a collection becomes more meaningful if what you are adding to your collection has a personal meaning to it. About 2 years ago, I performed a sort of Jedi purge to my collection, where I sold off a large amount of carded figures that I was keeping in boxes. Most of these figures were discounted or clearance toys, and I believe that a good deal doesn't mean that it's something I should buy. Rather than have them out of sight where I couldn't enjoy them, I just eliminated them from my collection altogether. Now I only make sure that I have one carded figure per new release. Before buying a new figure, I now ask myself, where does this fit into my collection? I approach it as an Imagineer from a Disney theme park might approach a new attraction by also asking, what story can this figure tell, or is there an existing story that can fit into? Finally, the best tool for maintaining focus in a collection is to catalog it with a spreadsheet. There's no better reminder of how much you own than a giant list you can scroll through. It's also a great way to avoid buying duplicates. Thanks for a great show, and may the force be with you, Mike McDonald." Well, Mike, thank you, and we've been throwing a Coffee with Kenobi Jet around a lot. I'd love to have you and Jeff come on down and help me make a spreadsheet of my collection, because that is going to be very time-consuming. However, it is a fantastic idea. I really like it.
It is a good tip, and I've thought about doing that myself.
Flying to help me?
No, it's creating a spreadsheet.
Okay.
I'm just, what's the word I'm looking for? Lazy. And it's becoming a problem because as I've gotten rid of quite a few things, I've started to forget, did I get rid of that? Or, in fact, in my collection of mask toys, I actually had, at one point I had 2 stingers because I thought I had sold one and I hadn't, and I bought it again. But that's okay because that's one of my favorite
there's
toys
nothing wrong with that.
But some great ideas. And, I talk a lot on my blog, The Caffeinated Collector, about how most of my collectibles, and especially the ones that I cherish the most, have a specific memory attached to them. And I think as we get older, we start to value memories more than merchandise.
It's true.
And I think Mike is kind of getting to that point as well, it sounds like.
A lot of things I'm looking at recently, I'll just remember moments or things that happened or discussions based on those collectibles. So that's pretty fun. I mean, heck, for me, my son, he was only 2. Just the other day, I've been showing him little snippets of Star Wars just for fun. He's actually requesting that over Daniel Tiger, which is a big news around the Zara household. But he calls R2-D2 beep, 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 and then he turns his head around almost like he's an owl to imitate R2-D2. So I feel I've done my job as a parent.
You're raising him right.
That's right. And this is just kind of what Mike is talking about. Star Wars is about memories, and that's sort of a collected memory that I know you've talked about that notion as well.
Right. For our final email on this show, we have an email from Andy Fry. He says, "Hello, Dan and Corey and Jeff." I added the "and Jeff." "My name is Andy Fry. I teach 9th grade physical science in Southern Ohio. I just recently found your podcast and have almost completed getting caught up on all the previous episodes. Wow. I absolutely love your show." I know, right? That's dedication. "Being 30, I grew up with some of my first memories being the old trilogy constantly playing on our home TV set, and my older brother and I dogfighting with the classic X-Wing versus TIE Fighter duel. Episode 1 came out when I was still a kid, Episode 2 when I was in high school, and Episode 3 came out the year after I graduated high school. I have the Rebel insignia tattooed on my right bicep. Like you, my fantastic podcasting friends, I live, breathe, and bleed Star Wars. My 5-year-old son, Luke, and I are also huge Rebels fans. I nearly passed out when I saw each of the Episode 7 teaser trailers, and I literally yelped and grabbed my wife's arm when I first heard Harrison Ford say the word Chewie, and a tear escaped each eye with, 'We're home.'" And he's not alone there. He goes on, "What prompted me to write you is this. Let me first say that I've done my best to listen to all of your existing episodes that might pertain to this topic. If I missed a discussion including this, please forgive me. I think that can be arranged, Andy. The issue is regarding Anakin, Palpatine, Darth Plagueis, and Anakin's origins. I'm obviously referring to the Opera House scene in which Palpatine creepily tells Anakin about Plagueis being able to manipulate midichlorians to make life. As this is being explained, ballet dancers with long flagella-like tails are flying through some gigantic liquid sphere with a semi-permeable membrane. all of which bear striking similarities to fertilization of the human egg. And Andy, thank you for allowing me to say fertilization of the human egg on a podcast. If Palpatine created Anakin, then we are left with a few ways to interpret what happened with respect to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. If Palpatine was the Sith to be destroyed in order for that prophecy to be fulfilled, then didn't he create his own destruction in a quest for more power through some sort of, and this is in quotes, custom apprentice through Force-assisted in utero immaculate conception, end quote, of Anakin? When I saw this scene for the first time, I immediately saw the symbolism and insinuation to mean that Palpatine manipulated the midichlorians and Shmi Skywalker to create Anakin. I know this idea is already out there, but why is it not discussed more? What does it mean to you guys? What does it potentially mean for episodes 7 through 9? You guys are the best. I would strongly consider force choking an Ewok if you guys would consider helping me get a Coffee with Kenobi coffee cup to use in my classroom. Sincerely, Andy Fry. I don't think any Ewoks need to be harmed in the making of anything. But yeah, this is the one thing that I love. I had Ryder Waldron on. I've talked about it before on Bantha Banter a couple of weeks ago. I'm sorry, Ryder Waldron DDS, as I've committed to calling him. And we discussed dental hygiene in the galaxy far, far away. And I love it when somebody like Andy, who has a certain expertise, comes in and puts that expertise in the context of the galaxy far, far away. So here's a guy who, knows physical science, and he's watching this scene, but he's seeing something completely different than what everybody else has seen, and makes perfect sense. And I think, I don't know about you, Dan, but I always took Palpatine's if it was true that Palpatine was able to create life and create Anakin, that it was just another example of his arrogance, because every Sith apprentice should want to kill their master based on the tenets of the Sith that we know.
Right.
So I think it's pure arrogance on Palpatine's part to say, nah, it'll be different with me.
Well, of course it is, and he thinks he's above the natural order of things. He doesn't believe he will die. And he wants to try to manipulate life to an extent that he wants to play God, which obviously is not going to happen, and it doesn't happen. And for further evidence of that, he exploded in the Return of the Jedi and the Death Star. To me, Palpatine, I used to think that he probably manipulated the midichlorians just based on that opera scene. And I know we already mentioned this, but James Luceno's Darth Plagueis clearly shows that is not the case, and it's not canonical. But it's hard to think of that scene now or anything involving the creation of Anakin and not sort of let that permeate how you view this particular idea. I think 7, 8, 9 are probably going to explain it. I believe it's been out there and pretty well acknowledged that midichlorians are not going to be mentioned in episode 7 for whatever reason. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see if that is in fact true. But I don't know. I'm not sure what to think. I don't think that I've always sort of been confused. Not confused, that's certainly not it. I wasn't confused. I've always had sort of a problem with the idea of Anakin's virgin birth. But from a mythological perspective, it's not confusing or unusual at all, because that's sort of the heroic archetypal thing anyway, which is clearly what Lucas was going for. And I know you probably have something you want to say about this. I will say, rather than force choking an Ewok, you can just go on to our webpage, coffeewithkenobi.com, and you can buy a Coffee with Kenobi coffee mug. And you can use that in your classroom, my friend. And, of course, kudos to being a fellow educator. And I hope that you are a rogue if you're not already one through Star Wars in the classroom. And if you're not, get in touch with Dan. There you go. And again, Andy, thank you for writing in with that perspective. I seriously, I'm enough of a nerd that I love stuff like this, and I love the idea of science and medicine being used in the galaxy far, far away. So, thanks again, Andy, for writing in. He blinded you with science. From Topps comes the all-new digital card collecting app, free to download from iTunes or Google Play. Star Wars Card Trader.
For the first time ever, collect and trade everything from legendary 1977 Star Wars cards to new cards featuring exclusive content from Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
All from the comfort of your mobile devices. Star Wars Card Trader.
These are the cards you're looking for.
Chewie, get us out of here!
If you would like to respond to our question of the show, have a comment, or just want to say hello, send us an email or MP3 to feedback@coffeewithkenobi.com. Or if you have a specific question or comment for any of us individually, you can email us at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com, Corey C@coffeewithkenobi.com, or Jeff M@coffeewithkenobi.com. Or visit us at coffeewithkenobi.com and click on the Contact Us section, or comment on one of the stories featured on the site. If you enjoy the show, please write a review in iTunes or Stitcher. You can also like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, as well as keep up to date at our Twitter feed at Coffee with Kenobi. There's no I in with. You can also find us on Tumblr at coffeewithkenobi.tumblr.com. If you enjoy the jazz music, the album is Eye to Eye by Steve Turok on iTunes.
Give the evacuation code signal.
That's it for show number 42 of Coffee with Kenobi. A huge thank you to Cole Horton for joining us to discuss Star Wars and history. Be sure to check out his new book and check out the link in our show notes for his great work. Thanks also to Jim Hill and Mark Van Ohlen for joining us for a cup of coffee and for discussing both the D23 Expo and Tops, respectively. A huge thank you to Mediocre Jedi, Mike Audette, Neil Lowry, Dennis Keithley, Matt Moore, Lillian Torres, Richard Rutledge Jr., Angela Souse, Chris Perillo, Graham Densham, and Jesse for their contributions to our Coffee with Kenobi Patreon page. If you want to support Coffee with Kenobi's Patreon page, check us out through our website or through the show notes.
Thanks also to Rob at the Bearded Trio, media specialist Lisa Dullard, our Coffee with Kenobi bloggers, everyone who contributed to this show, and to all of you out there who listen to and email Coffee with Kenobi. Don't forget to send us your comments and opinions on the topic for show number 43, your most compelling and significant Star Wars moments.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.